Hey guys, tonight we are taking a very, very long trip back in time. About 2500 years back, to be precise. We're heading to the heart of the mighty Achaemenid Empire, what we now call the First Persian Empire, This was a world of incredible wealth, staggering power, and let's just say, some very creative forms of justice. Honestly, if you were dropped there unprepared, you'd probably break a law by lunchtime and, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And for our little ritual, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop your city and the time in the comments below. It's always a quiet thrill for me to see our little community scattered all across the globe, all settling in together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The heat of the day is finally starting to give way to a cooler, more tolerable evening. For weeks you've been traveling, a tiny, dust-covered figure moving across the vast, sun-scorched landscapes that belong to the great King Darius. Your journey's immediate end is here, at the gates of Susa, one of the grand capitals of the empire. The name itself feels heavy on the tongue, ancient and important. Your sandals are caked in the pale dust of the royal road, and you pull your travel cloak a little tighter, not from cold, but from a sense of anonymity in a place so overwhelmingly large. You pass through the city gate, and the relative quiet of the plains is instantly shattered. It's a wave of sound and smell and life. The air, thick with the lingering warmth of baked earth, is a chaotic perfume of roasting meats, exotic spices you can't name, fragrant cedarwood, the sharp tang of tanning leather, and the warm, slightly sweet scent of thousands of people and their animals living in close quarters. The dominant sound is a low, constant hum of conversation in a dozen different languages. Aramaic, the lingua franca of the empire, mixed with the harsher tones of Median, the soft chatter of Elamite, and the clipped sounds of Babylonian merchants. This is the famous marketplace of Susa, a sprawling, vibrant organism. You navigate through the throng, careful not to bump into a stern-looking guard in a fluted helmet, or a richly robed official followed by a nervous-looking scribe. All around you, the wealth of an empire is on casual display. Lydian merchants with their scales, weighing out silver. Egyptians showing off fine linen and intricate ivory combs. Traders from the Far East with sacks of lapis lazuli, that deep blue stone the Persians love so much. You catch glimpses of the impossibly grand palace complex on its raised platform, its famous glazed brick reliefs of archers and mythical beasts shimmering in the last light of dusk. It's a place designed to make you feel small and insignificant before the power of the King of Kings. You stop at a stall piled high with dates, dark and sticky, to buy a small handful for your supper. As the vendor wraps them in a large leaf, you overhear the conversation of two men standing nearby, their backs to you. They're speaking in a low, conspiratorial tone, the kind of talk not meant for just anyone's ears. One is a dock worker, by the looks of his broad shoulders, uncalloused hands. The other seems to be a minor clerk or courier. A terrible fate, the clerk murmurs, shaking his head. They say they'll use the boats for it. The dock worker grunts. The boats? What? A simple drowning. He got off easy then. No. The clerk insists, leaning closer. Not in the river, on it. And worse. So much worse. Something about milk and honey. He says the words milk and honey, not like they are sweet things, but like they are curses. A punishment for those who anger the king in a way that can't be forgiven. An offense against his honor. You try not to look like you're listening, focusing intently on the exchange of coins with the date seller. Milk and honey? Boats. It makes no sense. It sounds like a child's fever dream. You've heard tales of punishments back home, of floggings and fines, but this sounds nonsensical, almost absurd. You walk away, the dates clutched in your hand, the strange words echoing in your head. You pass a high mud brick wall, over which you can smell the heady scent of roses and jasmine. It's a private garden, a little slice of cultivated heaven in the middle of the bustling city. You remember hearing a scholar once explain that our word paradise comes directly from the Old Persian word parid aida, which means walled garden. The Persians, for all their military might, were masters of creating these serene, beautiful enclosures. It's a strange and jarring contrast to the grim whispers you just overheard. Is such a thing even possible? Or is it just a grim story the kind soldiers tell to frighten new recruits, or merchants whisper to warn against cheating the powerful? The line between imperial propaganda, designed to ensure absolute loyalty through fear, and actual, practiced justice is often blurry. It's a question that, even millennia from now, historians will still be debating, poring over fragmented texts and third-hand accounts. From horrified exaggeration, it's just a disturbing fragment, a piece of grit in the otherwise magnificent machinery of Susa. You find a crowded but safe-looking caravanserai to rest for the night, the sounds of the city slowly softening to a distant murmur. But as you lie down on your bedroll trying to sleep, the clerk's words, boats, milk, honey circle in your mind like lazy, persistent flies. The caravanserai is a world within a world. A large, open courtyard surrounded by 2 levels of arched alcoves. It's a temporary home for everyone from grizzled camel drivers to sleek, well-dressed merchants with their own bodyguards. The air smells of animal dung, cooking fires, and cheap sour wine. It's not pleasant, but it's alive. You find a spot in a corner, content to be an observer. After a meager meal of your dates and some hard bread you bought, you treat yourself to a small clay cup of wine at the inn's makeshift tavern, a dimly lit room at the back of the courtyard. The place is buzzing. A group of Scythian mercenaries, identifiable by their pointed hats and loud, boisterous laughter, are gambling with dice in one corner. A family of Babylonians, the father anxiously counting his money, huddles together in another. You find an empty stall near the wall and nurse your wine. Let's hear in the noise wash over you. It's here in the semi-darkness that you see them again. Not the same men from the market, but men of a similar type. To Persian soldiers, their armor strapped and leaning against the wall, are deep in conversation with a man who looks like a river barge captain. You aren't trying to eavesdrop, not really. But their voices carry. They're speaking the same common Aramaic you understand, punctuated with military slang. The barge captain is a big man, his face a roadmap of wrinkles from squinting into the sun. He looks troubled. They told me to prepare 2 of them, he says, his voice a low rumble, shallow draft broad beam, and to lash them together. It's a bad omen bringing those things out. One of the soldiers, a younger man with a sparse patchy beard, scoffs. It's a worse omen to be the man they're meant for. I saw him, the traitor, Mithridates. A fool. A fool, maybe, the older soldier chimes in, his voice more weary than judgmental. He takes a long pull from his cup. But a soldier once fought at the king's side. To end up like that, he trails off, shaking his head. The barge captain leans forward, his elbows on the rough-hewn table. Is it true what they say about the feeding? The younger soldier nods eagerly, a little too enthusiastically, as if sharing a gory piece of gossip. Oh, it's true. The jailer told us. They've already started. Nothing but milk and honey, day in, day out. For sit down his throat if they have to. You feel a knot tighten in your stomach. The wine in your cup suddenly tastes like vinegar, milk and honey. The phrase again, but this time, it's not just a vague rumor. It's attached to a name, Mithridates, and a specific, grotesque process. You try to picture it, a person being forcibly fed sweet, rich food. It sounds less like a punishment and more like a bizarre form of torture from a myth. The barge captain visibly shudders. He makes a gesture with his hand, a common sign to ward off evil spirit. And then, he asks, his voice barely a whisper. Then he goes into the boat, the older soldier says, his tone flat and grim. The bottom one, they put the other one on top like a lid, holes cut for his head and hands and feet. And they seal it up around the edges with clay. He pauses. Then they cover him in more honey, to attract, the things that fly, and the things that crawl. A heavy silence falls over their table. Even the boisterous Scythians in the corner seem to have quieted down for a moment. as if sensing the dark turn in the room's atmosphere. You stare down into your cup, the dark red liquid swirling. The image the soldier painted is vivid, inescapable. A man trapped, immobile, a feast laid out upon his living body. It's an execution designed, not just to end a life, but to dismantle it, piece by piece, in the most drawn-out and humiliating way imaginable. It's a death by 1,000 tiny mouths. This is where you encounter one of those strange, unsettling details of history that feels too specific to be pure invention. Historians centuries later would call this practice Scaphism, from the Greek word Scaphism, meaning a bowl or a boat, and they would argue endlessly about whether it was a real, standard punishment or a single, apocryphal horror story that got embellished over time. Was it an Athenian propagandist's attempt to paint the Persians as decadent barbarians? Or was it a genuine, albeit rare, feature of their legal system, reserved for the most heinous of crimes? The academic debate is a quiet, sterile affair. But here, in this smoky tavern in Susa, the story feels chillingly real. You realize you've been staring at the soldiers. The older one catches your eye. His expression isn't hostile, just tired. He gives you a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. It's a clear warning you heard nothing. This is not your business. Forget it. You quickly look away, your heart pounding. You down the rest of your wine in one gulp, the burn in your throat a welcome distraction. You slide a small coin onto the counter and get up, walking steadily, but quickly, back to your alcove in the main courtyard. You roll yourself tightly in your cloak, but the image of the two boats, sealed like a grotesque clamshell, is seared into your mind. Sleep will not come easily tonight. The next morning, you wake up feeling like you haven't slept at all. The memory of the soldiers' conversation lingers like a bad taste. You decide to get out of the caravanserai early, to lose yourself in the morning bustle of Susa and shake off the grim feeling. The city is already wide awake, a well-oiled machine cranking into gear. You need to deliver a message, a sealed clay tablet from a merchant in your hometown to a contact here in the capital. The address is simply the workshop of Zaid, near the eastern gate. As you walk, you notice something you hadn't the day before. The sheer level of organization. It's not just chaos, it's a managed, policed chaos. Guards are everywhere, but they aren't just thuggish brutes. They are the king's men, part of a system. And as you round a corner into a less creative-looking district, you see him. H.E.S. just a man on horseback, but the effect he has on the street is immediate and profound. The low chatter of pedestrians dies down. People stop what they are doing and respectfully avert their eyes, many bowing their heads slightly. The man himself is unassuming in his dress, a simple but fine woolen robe, no ostentatious jewelry. But his face is sharp, intelligent, and his eyes seem to miss nothing. They scan the street, the rooftops, the faces of the people with a calm, calculating intensity. He is flanked by two guards, but it's clear the authority is all his. A shopkeeper, hastily pulling in a basket of figs from the roadside, mutters under his breath to his son, just loud enough for you to hear. The king's eye is on the move. Look busy. The king's eye. The title sends a little shiver down your spine. You've heard of these men. They are the Spozoka, the secret intelligence service of the Achaemenid Empire. They travel throughout the vast territories, often in disguise, observing everything. They check on the loyalty of governors, satraps, listen for whispers of rebellion, monitor the collection of taxes, and report everything directly back to the king. They are the physical embodiment of the saying, "The king has many eyes and many ears." This is a core tenet of Achaemenid rule control through information. The empire is too vast to be ruled by force alone. It requires a sophisticated network of surveillance to hold it all together. The man on the horse is a living, breathing part of that network. His job is to uncover secrets, to root out the kind of treason that might lead a man to the boats. His presence on this street corner is a silent reminder that there is no corner of the empire too remote, no conversation too private, to escape the king's notice. You find yourself wondering what he sees when he looks at you. A simple traveler, a potential threat, a source of information. You duck your head, feigning interest in the pattern of the cobblestones, until he passes. The collective tension on the street only dissipates once he has turned the next corner and is out of sight. The shopkeeper lets out a slow breath. This leads to a little-known quirk of the system. These eyes often worked in tandem with another official, known as the King's Ear, whose job was more specifically to listen to petitions and complaints from the populace, bypassing the local bureaucracy. It was a clever system, creating a direct feedback loop to the throne. But it also fostered a climate of paranoia. Who was an ear, there to help you? And who was an eye, there to watch you? Historians still debate how formalized these roles were. Were I under your official titles, or just colloquialism for the king's roving agents? The ambiguity was likely part of the design. You continue on your way, the encounter leaving you feeling exposed. You find the workshop of Zaid without much more trouble. It's a small, dusty place filled with the smell of clay and kiln fire. Zaid is an old man with hands permanently stained with ochre. You give him the tablet. He cracks it open expertly with a small chisel, reads the cuneiform script, and nods. He thanks you and gives you a small pouch of silver coins for your trouble. As he is tying the pouch, he looks at you kindly. You're not from Susa, are you, traveler? You shake your head. No, just passing through. Good, good, he says, his eyes crinkling. Susa is a magnificent city, the center of the world, but it is a city of high walls and low whispers. A bad place to be if you have enemies. He glances out the door, as if checking for the king's eye himself. Especially now, there is a shadow over the city. A great offense has been committed, and the king's justice will be memorable. He doesn't need to say more. You know what he means. The shadow HES talking about is shaped like two small boats. The knowledge seems to be everywhere, a low-frequency hum of dread beneath the surface of the city's vibrant life. You thanked aid and leave, the silver coins feeding heavy in your palm. Your simple task is done. Now you need to decide your next move. The desire to leave Susa, to put its high walls and low whispers behind you, is growing stronger by the hour. The coins from Zaid give you options, and the option you want most is distance. You inquire at the caravanserini about joining a trade caravan, any caravan, as long as it's leaving Susa. A clerk, a man with a perpetually bored expression, points you towards a group heading west, back the way you came and beyond, towards Sardis. It's a journey of months, but the first leg will take you far from the capital's unsettling atmosphere. The price to travel with them for protection is steep, but you pay it without haggling. You just want to be on the move. The next morning, before the sun has fully risen, you find yourself part of a long, snaking line of camels, donkeys, merchants, and guards, shuffling out of the western gate. The air is cool and smells of dust and animal sweat. As you leave the city walls behind, you feel a palpable sense of relief. And this isn't just any road. This is the Royal Road, the spine of the Achaemenid Empire. It's one of the great engineering and administrative marvels of the ancient world. Stretching over 2,500 kilometers from Susa in the east all the way to Sardis, near the Aegean coast in the west, it's the artery that pumps life, information, and power across the king's vast domain. You look down at the road beneath your feet. It's not a paved, stone-slab superhighway like the Romans would later build. In most places, it's a well-maintained, compacted earth track, wide enough for a chariot to pass. Its genius isn't in its surface, but in its infrastructure. The ground is level, cleared of rocks and regularly serviced. Its path is direct, cutting through mountains and across rivers where possible. You are, in effect, walking on a physical manifestation of imperial power. The caravan master, a stern median man named Barziu, sets a brisk, steady pace. He knows the road like the back of his hand. He tells you, during a brief water stop, but the road is marked every parasang, a Persian unit of distance, roughly 5.6 kilometers. But the real key to the road's success isn't the markers, it's the way stations, every 4 or 5 parasangs. Barziu explains, gesturing up the road with his chin, there is a guard station, a place to rest, get fresh water, and if you are the right person, a fresh horse. This is the system Herodotus, the Greek historian, would later write about with such admiration. A relay system. Dotted along the entire length of the royal road are over 100 of these stations, each provisioned and guarded, ready to service official travelers. It was the ancient world's equivalent or scale. It meant that a message from the king, or one of his eyes, could travel from one end of the empire to the other in a staggeringly short amount of time. As you walk, the landscape begins to change. The flat, fertile plains around Susa give way to a more rugged, rolling terrain. You cross a river on a sturdy, well-maintained ferry, the fee for which is standardized and posted on a clay tablet at the dock, a small, but significant detail showing the level of administrative control. There's no haggling, no capricious banditry on the king's own road. You pass other travelers, a detachment of soldiers marching in disciplined formation, their spear tips glinting in the sun. A high-ranking official in a covered litter, carried by 8 strong servants, his face hidden behind a fine linen curtain. You wonder what secret he carries, what decrees HES delivering. Perhaps HES a new governor for a distant province, or an investigator sent to look into financial irregularities. Or maybe HES just a courtier who has fallen out of favor, being sent to a quiet, unimportant post in the middle of nowhere as a form of slow political exile. The existence of this road changes everything. It shrinks the world. News that would have taken half a year to travel now arrives in a matter of weeks. An army can be dispatched to a troubled border with unprecedented speed. And a decree of punishment, conceived in the palace at Susa, can be carried out in a remote province with terrifying efficiency. The road is a tool of unity and control. It brings the empire together, but it also ensures there is nowhere to hide. It's this efficiency that subtly unnerves you. The system that can deliver a message of life and commerce is the same one that delivers a sentence of death. As you walk, you can't help but think of the man named Mithridates. If his sentence was indeed the boats, the news of it, the reasoning for it, the warning it represents, would travel along this very road. It would become a story told at the way stations, a cautionary tale whispered in the caravanserais, a tool of fear management, carried on the same infrastructure that carries grain tribute and royal commands. The road isn't just a path of dirt and gravel, it's a conduit for the king's will. And as you've learned in Susa, the king's will can be a very dark and strange thing indeed. You pull your cloak a little tighter and keep walking west, each footstep taking you further from the capital, but deeper into the empire it controls. A few days into your journey on the royal road, you witness the system in action. Your caravan has stopped near a way station to water the animals. The station itself is a modest but sturdy mud brick compound with a small stable and well. It's a functional, no-frills establishment. Suddenly you hear a faint, rhythmic pounding of hooves, growing rapidly louder. A cry goes up from the station guards. Ang Orus, make way. The caravan pulls to the side of the road, a practiced, almost reflexive maneuver. Everyone knows the drill. Down the road, a lone rider is coming at a full gallop, a plume of dust trailing behind him. HES leaning low over his horse's neck, his body a study in forward momentum. This is an Ang Orus, a royal messenger. He doesn't slow down as he approaches the station. Instead, he thunders directly into the compound. You see a flurry of activity. A groom is already waiting, holding the reins of a fresh horse, saddled and ready. The incoming rider, his face streaked with sweat and dirt, practically vaults from his exhausted, lather-covered mount. He carries a small, sealed leather satchel. Another man, clearly the next rider in the relay, snatches the satchel, leaps onto the fresh horse, and without a word, is gone galloping down the road in the opposite direction, disappearing as quickly as he arrived. The entire exchange takes less than 30 seconds. It's a breathtaking display of practiced efficiency. The first rider, his job done, is led away to get food and rest before he eventually takes another message back the other way. This is the Eye on the Imperial Postal Service. The Greek historian Xenophon, who knew the Persians well, claimed that this system was an invention of Cyrus the Great himself. He wrote that there was nothing in the world that could travel faster than these Persian couriers. His famous description, neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds, would, centuries later, be inscribed on a post office in New York City, a little-known fact that speaks volumes about the enduring legacy of this Persian innovation. You stand there mesmerized. What message could be so important? What news warrants such incredible speed? A declaration of war? A warning of a coming invasion? The birth of a royal heir? Or perhaps the confirmation of an execution order? The satchel is a blank slate, a vessel of pure information. Its contents could be world-changing or utterly mundane. The couriers themselves likely don't know. Their job is not to know but to ride. You think about the contrast. Your journey, a slow, plodding affair measured in weeks and months, versus this lightning-fast current of information flowing past you. The empire has to speeds the slow, deliberate pace of commerce and ordinary life, and the breakneck speed of royal command. The caravan master bars you, spits on the ground. The king's business, he says, his tone a mixture of respect and resentment. It waits for no man. The existence of such a system raises a fascinating, and still debated, question among scholars: how secure was it? The satchels were sealed, yes, often with the king's own signature impressed into a lump of clay. But were messages ever intercepted? Were they written in code? Some evidence suggests that for highly sensitive matters, the Persians employed some truly wild methods of cryptography. One apocryphal story, probably more legend than fact, tells of a message being tattooed onto the shaved head of a trusted slave. They would then wait for his hair to grow back, send him as a normal traveler, and the recipient would shave his head again to read the message. A method that is both genius and, let's be honest, ridiculously impractical. It highlights the constant tension between the need to send information quickly and the need to keep it secret. As the caravan gets moving again, you fall into the rhythm of the road, the steady plodding of the camels, but the image of the Angaros stays with you. You imagine the chain of riders stretching across deserts and mountains, a living nerve fiber of the empire. A thought conceived by the king in his palace in Susa could become an action in a distant city in Anatolia in just over a week. This speed is what holds the diverse, sprawling empire together. It's what allows one man to rule over millions, across dozens of different cultures and languages, and it means that the story you fled from in Susa isn't really left behind. It's traveling with you. In fact, it's probably outpaced you already. The news of the traitor Mithridates and his bizarre, horrifying sentence is likely already a topic of conversation in the very towns you are heading towards. The royal road doesn't just let you escape the capital. You escape the capital's shadow follows you wherever you go. You look ahead at the endless ribbon of road stretching to the horizon, and it feels less like a path to freedom and more like a leash. A week of travel finds you deep in the Zagros Mountains. The landscape is dramatic and severe, a world away from the flat plains of Susa. The royal road here is an even more impressive feat of engineering, a narrow track carved into the side of steep hills with vertiginous drops into the valleys below. The air is thinner, cooler. Your caravan arrives at a large, fortified caravanserai just as the sun is setting, casting long purple shadows across the peaks. This isn't just a simple way station, it's a major hub, a place where multiple trade routes converge. The courtyard is a chaotic symphony of noise and activity, even more so than the one in Susa. You see Bactrian camels with their long, shaggy coats, hardy mountain mules, and merchants whose faces are weathered by the high-altitude sun. You find a space to unroll your bedroll in a crowded common room, the air thick with the smell of wood smoke and damp wool. Tonight, there's no quiet corner to be found. You're pressed in among dozens of other travelers, a temporary community of strangers huddled together for warmth and safety. Next to you is an old man, a textile merchant from Espionage, the former capital of the Medes. His name is Irish, and he has a kind, weary face and hands stained with a rainbow of dye colors. He sees you are new to this route and strikes up a conversation, happy to share his knowledge, as old men often are. He offers you a piece of his flatbread, and you share some of your dried figs in return. He asks where you've come from, and when you say Susa, his eyes flicker with interest. "Ah, the heart of the lion," he says, stroking his white beard. "I was there a month ago." A city that glitters, but has sharp teeth. You nod, not wanting to say too much. But Arash seems to sense the unease that still clings to you. There is always trouble in the capitals, he continues, his voice low. Too much power, too much gold. It breeds ambition like standing water breeds mosquitoes. And ambition in our empire is a dangerous disease. The king does not tolerate rivals. He tears off another piece of bread and chews it thoughtfully. I, young man, a boy I knew from my city, went to Susa to be a soldier. A good boy, strong and loyal. He wrote to his mother. He saw something he was not meant to see. A nobleman, the commander, promising the king's favor to his men, as if it were his to give. Arash shakes his head slowly. A foolish, drunken boast. But an eye was there listening. The commander, he will not be seen again. The casual way he says it sends a chill through you. What happens to someone like that? You ask, trying to sound nonchalant. Arash looks at you, his old eyes sharp. For a crime against the king's own honor, for treason. They say there are fates worse than a quicksword. Fates designed to be a lesson. A story that will be told from the Indus Valley to the shores of Ionia. He leans a little closer. They speak of a punishment so foul, the priests themselves must perform purification rituals on the land where it is carried out. A punishment involving boats, and the sweetest things in the world turned to poison. There it is again, the story. Here, hundreds of kilometers from Susa, in the middle of the mountains, the same tale. But coming from this old, worldly merchant, it carries a different weight. It's not the gossipy rumor of a soldier or the hushed whisper of a clerk. It's presented as a known political reality, a true statecraft. This aligns with what many modern historians believe about such punishments. Their primary purpose wasn't just to eliminate an enemy, but to serve as what they call exemplary punishment. The goal was to be so horrifying, so memorable, that it would deter anyone else from even thinking about committing a similar crime. The true audience for the punishment wasn't the victim, but the thousands of people who would hear the story. It was psychological warfare, waged against the empire's own elite. Arash sighs, a deep, mournful sound. It is a terrible thing. But the empire is vast. It is a wild horse, and the king believes it must be broken with a heavy hand. He then shares a strange piece of legal trivia, a testament to the Persian obsession with justice, or at least the appearance of it. Did you know, he says, that by our law, the king himself cannot execute someone for a single offense. He must, by law, weigh the man's good deeds against his single crime. Only if the crime outweighs a lifetime of service can a sentence be passed. This concept, known as the balance of deeds, is a fascinating and somewhat paradoxical aspect of Persian law. On one hand, it suggests a desire for fairness and measured judgment. On the other, it exists within a system that could produce something as grotesque as the blood punishment. It's as if the legal framework had to be meticulously just, precisely so it could legitimize the most extreme forms of retribution when they were deemed necessary. The argument over whether this made the system more just or simply more terrifying is one that has no easy answer. You thank Arash for the bread and the conversation. You lie back on your bedroll, surrounded by the snores and murmurs of the sleeping merchants. The story of the boats no longer feels like a monstrous anomaly. You're beginning to understand it as part of a system of roads, messengers, spies and laws, all designed to maintain absolute control. The punishment isn't the breakdown of the system, it's the system working exactly as intended. More chilling than any ghost story. Leaving the jagged peaks of the Zagros behind, the caravan descends into the fertile plains of Western Media. The landscape softens. The air grows warmer, thick with the scent of agriculture. This is a land of plenty, a stark contrast to the harsh mountains you've just crossed. You see sprawling fields of barley and wheat, and vast, ancient orchards of figs and pomegranates. The road here is flanked by small, prosperous-looking villages. The people seem well-fed, their livestock plump. This is the agricultural heartland of the empire, the breadbasket that feeds the armies in the cities. And it is here that you encounter things in abundance: milk and honey. Herds of goats and fat-tailed sheep are everywhere, their bells creating a gentle clinking soundtrack to the day's travel. At every village market, you see women selling large clay jars of fresh milk, thick yogurt, and salty cheese. It's a staple of the local diet, a symbol of life and sustenance. And then, there's the honey. Beekeeping is a major local industry. You see the cylindrical clay hives stacked in neat rows near the orchards, the air around them buzzing with activity. The honey from this region is famous, a golden, fragrant nectar that is traded all across the empire. It's used to sweeten food, to make mead, and as a medicinal balm. It's a symbol of sweetness, preservation, and natural goodness. But for you, these two simple, wholesome things are now tainted. You can't look at a jar of milk without thinking of the soldier's words until his insides turn to water. You can't see a pot of golden honey without imagining it's mirrored over a man's skin, a glistening lure for crawling things. The idyllic pastoral landscape around you has become a gallery of sinister props. The very symbols of life and sweetness have been twisted in your mind into instruments of a slow, agonizing death. You buy a small piece of cheese and some bread for your lunch, but you avoid the honey cakes on offer at the market stall. A sudden wave of nausea washing over you. The vendor gives you a strange look, but you just shake your head and move on. This journey is turning you into a reluctant philosopher. You're starting to see the duality in everything. The royal road, a symbol of unity, is also a conduit of fear. The king's law, meant to provide order, can be used to enact unimaginable cruelty. And now milk and honey, the very essence of the land of plenty, have become a source of horror. It's as if the empire, in its quest for total control, has a knack for corrupting the very things it claims to protect. During a rest stop, you watch a beekeeper tending to his hives. H.E.S. a calm, methodical old man, moving slowly, a thin veil over his face. He gently puffs smoke into the hives to calm the bees before collecting the honeycomb. It's a peaceful, ancient craft. He offers a taste of the fresh honey on a wooden stick to one of your fellow travelers. The traveler smiles, savoring the sweetness. You turn away. This highlights an interesting and often overlooked aspect of the ancient world, the power of symbolic meaning. To the Persians, honey was sacred in many ways. It was associated with fertility and was sometimes used in funerary rites as a preservative. The Zoroastrian religion, which was becoming dominant in Persia, placed a huge emphasis on purity and avoiding the corruption of the elements earth, fire, water. A standard burial or cremation was seen as defiling. This led to some unique practices, like leaving bodies on high platforms, towers of silence, to be consumed by birds. But there's a weirder, more obscure practice that some scholars, like the Greek historian Strabo, mentioned: coating a body in wax or honey before burial. This was a method of preservation, but it also had deep symbolic resonance. Now imagine twisting that. Instead of preserving a respected dead body, you use honey to accelerate the decomposition of a living one by attracting insects. It's a deliberate, almost poetic inversion of a sacred rite. It's not just killing someone, it's a form of religious and symbolic blasphemy, turning a tool of preservation into a tool of desecration. The argument continues to this day: was the choice of milk and honey purely practical for the purpose of the torture, or was it a calculated symbolic insult? As you sit there, watching the beekeeper, a swarm of bees suddenly rises from one of the hives, a buzzing, dark cloud that momentarily fills the air before settling again. But you just stare at them, a cold knot in your stomach. You are no longer afraid of their sting. You are unnerved by what they represent in the story that haunts you. They are no longer just insects, they are potential executioners. The caravan prepares to move on. You get to your feet, the pastoral beauty of the landscape now feeling like a thin, fragile veneer over something deeply unsettling. You have come to a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the old stories promise. But you have learned that in the Persian Empire, even the sweetest things can have a dark side. Your journey continues westward, and after several more weeks on the road, your caravan arrives in a major provincial capital. Let's call it by a name the Greeks would use: Gabai. It's a bustling administrative center, smaller and less overwhelming than Susa, but still crackling with the energy of imperial governance. The reason for the caravan's extended stop here is business. Baziyu, your caravan master, has goods to trade and taxes to pay. This delay gives you an unwelcome opportunity to witness the empire's legal machinery up close. The city is abuzz with news of a public trial. The provincial governor, the satrap, will be holding court in the main square. Curiosity, mixed with a morbid sense of obligation to understand the world you're in, draws you towards the proceedings. The square is already crowded when you arrive. A large, elevated platform has been erected, upon which sits a heavy, carved wooden chair. This is the seat of judgment. The satrap, a portly man with a well-oiled black beard and robes of Tyrian purple, eventually takes his seat with immense self-importance. He is the king's proxy, and he makes sure everyone knows it. Guards stand at attention, their spears polished to a mirror shine. The case being heard is not one of high treason, but a more common, yet serious offense: corruption. A local tax collector is accused of embezzling funds from the provincial treasury. A scribe reads the charges from a clay tablet, his voice droning and monotonous. The accused man, a small, sweaty individual, stands before the satrap, looking terrified. The trial itself is a surprisingly orderly affair. Witnesses are called both for the prosecution and the defense. Evidence is presented: account ledgers on tablets, testimony from merchants who were overcharged. It's a far cry from a kangaroo court. The satrap listens patiently, occasionally asking a sharp, insightful question. You see the Persian legal system in its ideal form: structured, evidence-based, and deliberate. It's the system that Arish the merchant described, the one that prides itself on weighing the facts. But as the trial progresses, you feel a distinct chill. There's an undercurrent of absolute, unquestionable power. The satrap isn't just a judge, he is the accuser, jury, and sentencer all in one. His word is final. There is no appeal, except perhaps a direct and usually impossible plea to the great king himself. The fate of the small, sweaty man rests entirely on the mood and judgment of the powerful man in the purple robe. Eventually, the satrap bangs a wooden gavel on the table. He has heard enough. He declares the tax collector guilty. A silence falls over the crowd. What will the punishment be? This is where you learn another strange and specific detail about Persian justice. For crimes of corruption and bribery, they had some notoriously harsh and symbolic punishments. The Greek historian Herodotus tells stories of corrupt judges being flayed, their skinned and unused to upholster the very judicial seat their successor would sit on, a permanent, gruesome reminder of the price of dishonesty. The satrap, however, chooses a different path today. He sentences the man to have his hands cut off. It's a brutal punishment, but one with a cold logic to it. A man who used his hands to steal will have no hands left to steal with. The sentence is to be carried out immediately in the square for all to see. A wave of murmurs ripples through the crowd. You feel sick and turn to leave, not wanting to witness the grim spectacle. As you push your way through the throng, you realize the purpose of this public display. Like the story of the boats, this is exemplary punishment. It's not just about the guilty man, it's about sending a clear message to every other official, clerk, and scribe in the province. The message is simple: this is what happens when you steal from the king. This moment forces you to confront the complex nature of Achaemenid law. It wasn't just a single, monolithic code. It was a blend of ancient Mesopotamian law like the Code of Hammurabi, local traditions of the conquered peoples, and the overriding authority of the king's decrees. A fascinating quirk of this system was the high status of judges. They were a professional class, appointed for life, and held to an incredibly high standard. The story of the flayed judge, whether true or not, illustrates the ideal that the law itself was sacred, and those who administered it were expected to be beyond reproach. Historians still puzzle over this. How could a system that so revered the concept of law also permit such extreme and arbitrary authority in the hands of a single satrap or king? It's a contradiction at the heart of their world. You finally break free of the crowd, your heart pounding. You walk quickly through the unfamiliar streets of Gabi, trying to put the scene behind you. But you can't. The orderly, almost bureaucratic nature of the trial, followed by the swift, brutal verdict, is deeply unsettling. It's the cold, calculated application of cruelty that gets to you. This isn't the hot-blooded rage of a brawl, it's the dispassionate, systematic enforcement of power. You think of the boats. You now understand that such a punishment, as bizarre as it sounds, could fit perfectly within this system. It would be decreed from a throne, the charges read by a scribe, the sentence carried out by methodical officials, all as part of a process. The true horror isn't chaos or barbarism. It's the horror of a highly organized, bureaucratic system that can, with perfect command order, decide to feed a man to insect. The caravan finally leaves Gabai, and you are more than happy to see the city's walls fade into the distance. The public sentencing has left a sour taste in your mouth, and you spend the next few days in quiet contemplation, processing what you've seen. You talk more with Arish, the old textile merchant, during the long, monotonous hours of walking. His long life of travel has made him a keen observer of the empire's inner working. One evening, as you share a small fire by the side of the road, you cautiously bring up the subject that has been haunting you. You don't mention the rumors from Susa directly, but you talk about the satrap's justice, its harshness, and the stories one hears about extreme punishments for treason. Arish listens patiently, poking the fire with a stick, sending a shower of sparks into the dark sky. "Ah," he says, his voice low. "You are thinking about the story of the boats." You're taken aback by his directness. You simply nod. "It is a story that travels well," he says with a wry, sad smile. "It has fast legs. But let me ask you a question, young traveler. In all your journey, have you met anyone who has actually seen it with their own two eyes?" You think back. The soldiers in the tavern in Susa were talking about a man named Mithridates, and the barge captain was told to prepare the boats. The clerk in the market had heard it from someone else. Arish himself is telling it as a known tale, but no one, not a single person, has said, "I was there, I saw a second or third-hand information." A jailer told a soldier who told another soldier. A courtier heard a rumor. "No," you admit. "I haven't." "Nor have I," Arish says, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. "And I have been traveling these roads for 50 years. I have seen hangings. I have seen beheadings. I have seen the justice of the satrap's knife. But the boats, I have only ever heard the story." He lets that sink in. "And that, my boy, may be its true power. It lives in the mind. It lives in the telling. A story is more powerful than a single act of cruelty. But execution is over in a day, and the body is gone. But a story can live forever. It can be in 1,000 places at once, in every tavern and every marketplace from here to Egypt. This is a profound realization. You've been haunted by the reality of the punishment, but what if its reality is the story itself? What if the boat punishment, or as Scaphism, was the ancient world's version of an urban legend, a piece of fake news deliberately crafted and spread by the state? This is a very real and persistent debate among modern historians. While the Greek authors Plutarch and Xenophon describe it, they were writing long after the events, and they were to portray the Persians as cruel and decadent, in contrast to their supposedly more civilized Greek world. There is, to date, no Achaemenid-era Persian text or inscription that describes this punishment. No official records, no legal codes, nothing. All we have are accounts from their rivals. So, the central question remains, was Scaphism a real, if rare, punishment? Or was it a masterful piece of psychological propaganda, a black op of rumors, designed to terrify potential traitors into submission? Or perhaps, was it a bit of both? Maybe it was performed once or twice, on some truly high-profile traitors, precisely so the story could be seeded, taking on a life of its own afterwards. The historical record is silent, leaving scholars to argue endlessly. Arish continues, "The king is a master of symbols. His face is on every gold coin. The Darak's palaces are covered in carvings that show the whole world bringing him tribute. He wants his subjects to feel his power, even when they cannot see him. A story of a terrible, inescapable, and bizarre punishment does that work for him. It is its own kind of king's eye, watching over the ambitious in their hearts." He then tells you a curious tidbit that seems to support his theory. In my grandfather's time, under the great King Cyrus, the punishments were said to be swift and clean. A sword for a nobleman. Cyrus built the empire on speed and conquest, but also on a reputation for mercy to the conquered. It is under the later kings, the ones who must hold the empire together, that these darker stories begin to spread. This suggests a possible evolution in imperial strategy, from conquest through force to maintenance through fear. You look at the fire, its warmth pushing back the vast, dark emptiness of the plains. You feel a strange sense of relief. The idea that the boats might just be a story, a ghost haunting the empire's highways, is somehow less terrifying than the thought of it being a routine procedure. It doesn't make the empire less ruthless, but it makes its cruelty more calculated, more intelligent, and in a weird way, more understandable. It is a weapon, just like a spear or a bow, but it targets the imagination. As you get ready for sleep, the world feels different. The monster you've been imagining might not be real. But then a new, more subtle fear creeps in. You are living in a world where the authorities are so powerful. They don't just control your body and your property, they are actively trying to control what you fear, to plant nightmares in your mind as a matter of policy. The boats may or may not be real. The boats may or may not as a matter of policy. That you are living proof that the propaganda is working. The conversation with us changes the texture of your journey. The fear becomes less immediate, more abstract. You are still wary, still a small and insignificant person in a vast and powerful empire, but the specific, visceral horror that has been your constant companion begins to recede. It is replaced by a kind of intellectual curiosity, a desire to undo this great beast. And soon, you will get your chance. The caravan's route curves south. You are leaving the main road to Sardis and joining a smaller, but still well-traveled path. Arish tells you the reason the caravan has goods that are in high demand in the new ceremonial capital, a place whose name is spoken with a mixture of awe and reverence. Parsa. The Greeks will later call it Persepolis, the city of the Persians. As you travel, the landscape begins to change again. It becomes drier, more rugged, but grander. You are entering the Persian heartland, the ancestral home of the kings. The air itself seems to shimmer with a different quality of light. Then, one afternoon, Arish points to the horizon. There, he says, look. At first you see nothing but a vast flat plain with a mountain rising abruptly from its edge, but as you get closer, you begin to make out details. At the foot of the mountain, on a colossal raised stone terrace, something is gleaming in the sunlight. A collection of massive stone structures, columns. So many columns, reaching for the sky like a forest of stone. This is Persepolis. Even from a distance, it takes your breath away. It's unlike any city you've seen. Susa was an ancient, organic, sprawling city. Gabai was a functional, administrative town. This is something else entirely. It feels deliberate, planned, almost artificial. It's not a city for living in, it's a statement. A declaration of power carved in stone and set against the sacred backdrop of the Mountain of Mercy. As your caravan slowly approaches over the next several hours, the scale of it becomes almost incomprehensible. The terrace on which it is built is immense, a man-made plateau lifted above the plain. You can now see the great ceremonial stairways leading up to it, wide enough for 10 men to walk abreast. You enter the sprawling tent city and temporary settlements that have sprung up around the base of the great terrace. This is where the workers, merchants, soldiers, and petitioners live. It's a bustling, chaotic counterpoint to the serene, orderly majesty of the palace complex above. Your caravan finds its place, and you know you will be here for some time. That evening you leave the noisy camp and walk to the foot of the terrace, craning your neck to look up. The last rays of the sun are hitting the tops of the columns, making them glow. You can hear the faint sounds of guards calling to each other on the walls above. It feels like standing at the foot of a mountain range built by gods, not men. Persepolis was a project of immense ambition, started by Darius the Great and continued by his sons Xerxes and grandson Artaxerxes. It was not the administrative capital of the empire that was Susa, or Ecbatana, or even Babylon. Persepolis was the ceremonial and spiritual heart. It was primarily used for one major event, now a UZ, the Spring Equinox Festival. It was here that the king would receive tribute and homage from all the subject nations of his vast empire. A little-known fact about its construction is revealed in the thousands of clay tablets found in the ruins, the so-called Persepolis Fortification and Treasury archives. These aren't grand historical chronicles, but bureaucratic records, payrolls, work orders, receipts for grain and wine. And they tell a surprising story. Contrary to the popular image of great ancient monuments being built by slaves, the records from Persepolis show that the workers here were paid. They were free men and women from all over the empire: Babylonians, Egyptians, Ionians, who were compensated for their labor with rations of barley, flour, and wine. It was a multi-ethnic, wage-earning workforce. This doesn't negate the empire's other brutalities, but it paints a more complex picture. The king could command, but he also compensated. As darkness falls, the stars come out brilliant in the clear, dry air. You look up at the silent, colossal silhouette of the palace against the star-dusted sky. You think about the sheer will it must have taken to conceive of such a place, let alone build it. A king wakes up one day and decides to erect a monument to his own power. A stage for the world to come and adore him. And you realize that this place, Persepolis, and the story of the boats are two sides of the same coin. They are both expressions of the same absolute, theatrical power. One is a display of magnificence, designed to inspire on loyalty. The other is a story of horror, designed to inspire fear and obedience. Oh, and fear. The carrot and the stick. One is a beautiful, shining stage. The other is a dark, terrifying whisper. Both are tools to hold a fragile, sprawling empire together. Historians still debate the true purpose of Persepolis. Was it purely ceremonial? Was it a fortress? Was it a religious center? The answer is likely all of the above. Its very ambiguity is part of its power. It is whatever the king needed it to be. You stand there for a long time just looking. For the first time, you feel like you are beginning to understand the mind of the empire, its grand ambitions, its profound insecurities, and the spectacular, and sometimes terrifying, lengths it will go to in order to project its power onto the world. Tomorrow, Arish has promised to use his merchant connections to get you onto the terrace itself. You will walk among the columns. The thought is both deeply intimidating. The next morning, Arish makes good on his promise. Through a connection with the purveyor of fine wool to the palace garrison, he secures you a pass. It's just a small clay token with a seal pressed into it, but it's a key to another world. You walk with him towards the great stairway, your heart thumping with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The stairway itself is an architectural marvel. The steps are incredibly shallow, only about 10 centimeters high. The story goes that they were designed this way so that Persian nobles and foreign dignitaries in their long, formal robes could ascend the platform with grace and dignity, without having to awkwardly hoist their knees. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the thought that went into every aspect of this place. As you reach the top of the stairs, you pass through the first great structure, the Gate of All Nations. It's a monumental gateway, guarded by two colossal stone beasts. They are Lamassu, human-headed, winged bulls, ancient symbols of protection and power borrowed from Assyrian and Babylonian tradition. They are immense, towering over you, their stone eyes staring into eternity. Their sheer size and silent power are designed to do one thing: intimidate. They are the bouncers at the grandest party on earth, and they make it clear that you are entering a space of immense power. You pause beneath the archway. Carved into the stone in 3 languages: Old Persian, Enamot, and Babylonian is an inscription. Arish, who is literate, reads it for you in a low voice. Thus says Xerxes, the great king, the king of kings, by the grace of Ahura Mazda, this gate of all nations I did build. Much else that is beautiful was built in this parsa, which I and my father did build. It's a direct message from the king, a signature on his masterpiece. Once you pass through the gate, the palace complex opens up before you, and it's breathtaking. A vast expanse of halls, palaces, and courtyards dominated by that forest of columns. You are now walking on the Achaemenid, the great audience hall. This is the centerpiece of Persepolis, the stage upon which the empire's grandest political theater was performed. You walk towards the eastern stairway of the Achaemenid. Its retaining wall is covered in the most magnificent and detailed relief carvings you have ever seen. This is the true treasure of Persepolis. It's a stone tapestry that tells the story of the empire. Irish guides you along, pointing out the details. The carvings depict an endless procession. First, you see the Persian and Median nobles, the elites of the empire, dressed in their fine robes, chatting casually with one another. They look relaxed at home. Then following them, come the delegations from every corner of the known world. Each group is depicted with stunning anthropological accuracy. You see Scythians in their pointed hats, leading a horse. Babylonians with their distinctive harrant beards, carrying bowls. Lydianese offering intricate armlets and vases. Egyptians with their pleated linen skirts. Cushites from Africa, one of them leading a giraffe, an animal you've only ever heard of in wild tales. There are 23 distinct delegations in all, each led by a Persian or Median usher, who holds them by the hand in a gesture that is both welcoming and controlling. This is the now or use tribute ceremony frozen in time. It's a perfect, idealized portrait of the empire. It shows a world where dozens of different peoples, each with their own unique culture and dress, come willingly and peacefully to pay homage to the great king. There is no depiction of violence, no sign of conquest. It is a masterpiece of political propaganda, conveying the idea that the Persian Empire is not a brutal occupier, but a benevolent, multicultural commonwealth, with the king as its wise and powerful father figure. Of course, you know the reality is more complicated. This tribute was not always given so willingly. The empire was won and held by the sword, but here, on the walls of the Achaemenid, a different story is being told. The story the king wants to be true. This leads to a fascinating little detail that archaeologists puzzle over. In some places, the carvings show signs of having been painted in vibrant colors. Traces of pigment have been found. It's hard for us to imagine, as we are used to seeing classical ruins in monochrome stone, but this place would have been a riot of color. The robes, the animals, the jewelry all painted. It would have looked alive. The debate still rages on the exact shades and how extensively the paint was used, but it's certain that the Persepolis we see today is a pale ghost of its former, vibrant self. You run your hand gently over the cool, smooth stone of a carving of an Ionian Greek. His robes finely detailed. You feel a strange connection across time. You are a traveler, just like him, come to the heart of power. You are witnessing the empire's self-image, its carefully constructed identity. It's a powerful and seductive vision. For a moment, you forget the spies, the harsh justice, the whispers of dark punishments. You are simply in awe of the grandeur, the artistry, and the sheer, breathtaking ambition of it all. This is the beautiful mask the empire wears. And as you stand there, under the watchful eyes of the stone delegations, you understand that this beautiful mask and the terrifying stories you've heard are not opposites. They are both essential parts of the same complex machine of control. One draws you in with beauty, the other pushes you into line with fear, and you are standing right in the middle of it all. You spend a few more days exploring the periphery of Persepolis, never again gaining access to the terrace itself, but soaking in the atmosphere of the bustling international community at its base. Arish introduces you to some of his contacts, and one evening you find yourself sharing a cup of wine with a man who is both utterly ordinary and completely extraordinary, a Greek physician named Achaemenid. He is not a grand court figure but a junior doctor, a man of practical skills from the island of Kos, home of the famous Hippocratic school of medicine. He was brought here because of his knowledge of anatomy and healing, skills for which Greek doctors were renowned throughout the ancient world. He serves some of the lesser nobles and high-ranking military officials. Achaemenid is a man caught between two worlds. He is pragmatic and speaks Aramaic with a thick Ionian accent. He has the observational, evidence-based mindset of a Greek scientist, which makes his perspective on the Persian court utterly fascinating. H.E.S. not impressed by the grandiosity in the same way you were. He sees it as a doctor sees a patient, a complex system with its own peculiar strengths and pathologies. They are obsessed with honor, he tells you, swirling the dark wine in his cup. He doesn't seem to fear being overheard, perhaps because as a foreigner and a man of science, he exists slightly outside the normal social pressures. Everything for the Persian elite comes down to Osha truth, order, righteousness, and Dr. Osha truth, order, righteousness, and Dr. Ober, the honor of the king. He leans forward. A Greek nobleman, if he is insulted, might challenge you to a duel or sue you in a court. A Persian nobleman believes an insult to his honor is a tear in the fabric of the cosmos, and a lie told to the king is the greatest sin imaginable. It's a form of cosmic treason. This, he explains, is why their punishments can seem so theatrical. In my homeland, Achaemenid says, justice is about restoring balance. You pay a fine, you are exiled, you are executed. It is a transaction. Here, justice is about purification. It is about wiping a stain from the world. It must be a spectacle. It must be symbolic. He then tells you about the man you heard of back in Susa, the traitor Mithridates. Achaemenid has heard the court version of the story. He got drunk at a royal banquet, the doctor says, shaking his head in disbelief at the foolishness of it. And he claimed credit for something the king's own brother, Cyrus the Younger, had done in a hunt. He tried to steal the king's honor, to create a lie in the presence of the throne. To a Greek, this is a boastful faux pas. It's like trying to put out the sacred fire with mud, and then he says it. So they gave him the boats. The story is all over the court. They speak of it with a kind of holy terror. Coming from this man of science, this rational Greek, the confirmation is jarring. He speaks of it not as a rumor, but as a known sentence for a specific crime. He describes it with a clinical detachment that is somehow more chilling than the soldier's gossip. He tells you he has had to treat men for infected wounds, for fevers, for all manner of ailments. He understands what happens to the human body when it is compromised. From a medical perspective, he muses, his face grim, it is a cascade of system failures. The forced feeding of milk and honey would induce osmotic diarrhea, leading to severe dehydration. The external honey would attract insects. Their bites would create wounds. Those wounds would become infected. The constant waste produced by the victim would foul the enclosed space, leading to sepsis. It's death by 1,000 cuts, but the cuts are made by infection, dehydration, and shock. In its own horrifying way, he then shares a truly bizarre, niche detail that underscores the cultural chasm. He mentions the Persian concept of Khifstra, which are considered noxious creatures or unholy beasts in Zoroastrianism. These are animals created by the evil spirit, Achaemenid, to plague the world. The list includes things like snakes, scorpions, ants, and flies. Killing these creatures was considered a virtuous act. So you see, Achaemenid explains, in their worldview, they are not just leaving a man to be eaten by insects. They are leaving a liar, a practitioner of Dr. Auguste, to be consumed by the very agents of chaos and corruption he has embraced. It is poetic to them. The academic world still debates how much these specific religious doctrines influence the justice system, but hearing it from Achaemenid, it clicks into place. The punishment isn't just cruel, it's a piece of religious theater. It's a sermon delivered with a body. We Greeks, Achaemenid says, finishing his wine, we fear the fates, the capricious gods. The Persians, they fear cosmic disorder. They believe their king is the guarantor of that order. To lie to him is to invite chaos into the world, and they will use the most chaotic means imaginable to prove the point. He looks at you, his physician's eyes assessing you. Be careful in this land of beautiful surfaces, my friend. What you see on the walls of the Achaemenid is the ideal. The boats are the reality for those who shatter that ideal. His words strip away the last of your comforting theories that it was all just a story. Perhaps the story and the reality were one and the same. It was a story with a real victim, and it was a story with a real victim at its center. The Greek doctor's words linger in your mind long after you've left his company. They have re-solidified the horror, grounding it in a logic that is both alien and terrifyingly coherent. The boats are no longer a phantom. They are a prescribed cure for a spiritual disease. This knowledge changes the air in Persepolis for you. The magnificent carvings on the Achaemenid now seem less like a celebration and more like a warning. This is the order you must not disrupt. A new tension is palpable in the tent city at the foot of the palace. It's a subtle shift, a change in the tenor of the conversations. The guards on the terrace seem more numerous, their movements sharper. There are more patrols, more questions asked. Irish, with his ear perpetually to the ground, picks up on it immediately. Something is wrong in the house of the king, he murmurs to you one evening as you eat your meal, the whispers of claws. The story filters down from the palace, through the servants, the guards, the purveyors and into the general populace, losing details and gaining embellishments with each telling. But the core of it is this: another plot has been uncovered. Not a drunken boast at a banquet this time, but something far more serious, a conspiracy. The details are murky, contradictory. Some say a satrap from a powerful eastern province was involved. Others say it was a group of high-ranking military commanders. The most dangerous rumor, the one spoken in the lowest whispers, is that a member of the royal family itself was implicated, a distant cousin or a half-brother of the king with ambitions of his own. This is the ever-present vulnerability of the Achaemenid dynasty. The great king often had many wives and concubines, resulting in a bewildering number of sons, half-brothers, and ambitious relatives, all with a plausible, if tenuous, claim to the throne. The history of the empire is riddled with succession crises and princely rebellions. The serene, unified image projected by the Achaemenid reliefs was a fragile ideal, constantly threatened by the messy reality of family politics. The uncovering of this new plot has thrown the court into a state of paranoia. Arrests have been made. Important men who were seen walking the grounds of the palace yesterday have vanished today. No one is sure who is accused, who is the accuser, and who might be next. An atmosphere of suspicion hangs over everything. A friendly conversation could be an interrogation. A shared cup of wine could be a test of loyalty. You see it in the faces of the officials who pass by your camp. They walk with a new stiffness, their eyes darting about. Everyone is trying to look loyal, to make themselves as small and unobtrusive as possible, lest the roving gaze of the king's investigators fall upon them. This situation highlights a fundamental weakness in the empire's power structure. The very thing that made the king so powerful, his absolute authority, also made him the single point of failure. To seize power, you didn't need to win the hearts and minds of the people. You just needed to eliminate one man. This made plots against the king's life the most direct path to power, and consequently, the crime that was punished with the most inventive and horrifying cruelty. A strange, almost forgotten piece of legal history comes to mind, something a scholar once mentioned. In some ancient Mesopotamian traditions that influenced Persian law, there was a concept of the substitute king. If the omens predicted that a great evil was about to befall the king, they would find a commoner, often a prisoner or a man of no importance, and place him on the throne for a short period. He would be given the royal robes, the fine food, all the trappings of power. The idea was that the evil omen would strike the substitute, not the real king. After a few days, the substitute would be removed and executed, having served his purpose of absorbing the bad luck. Historians still debate whether the Persians practiced this, but the existence of the concept shows the immense anxiety surrounding the king's safety and the extreme, almost magical thinking that was employed to protect him. Now, with a real plot afoot, the paranoia is not about omens, but about assassins. The loyalty of the king's own guards, the famous immortals, is questioned. The food tasters are working overtime. The king's eyes are everywhere, and they are no longer just observing, they are actively hunting. For you, a simple traveler, this has one clear meaning: Persepolis is no longer a place of awe. It has become a place of danger. You are a nobody, a foreigner, which should make you invisible. But in a climate of such intense suspicion, anyone can be caught in the net. A wrong word, a misunderstood gesture, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, that's all it would take. The story of the boats, which had started as a distant rumor, then became a confirmed, if horrifying, reality, has now taken on a new and immediate terror. It's no longer a punishment for some fool in a faraway city. It's the potential fate for the men who are now locked in the palace dungeons just up the hill. The abstract horror has become a looming, local possibility, Reich senses it too. The wind has a bad smell, he says one night, looking up at the stone giants on the terrace. It is the smell of fear. It is time for us to leave. The name begins to circulate in hushed tones. Passed from merchant to soldier, from servant to scribe, a single word that encapsulates the entire paranoid drama unfolding in the palace above. The name is Mithridates. Wait. You frown, a jolt of confusion running through you. Mithridates? That was the name of the soldier from the story in Susa. The man who supposedly boasted at a banquet and was sentenced to the boats. It can't be the same person. That was weeks ago, hundreds of kilometers away. You voice your confusion to Arash. The old merchant shakes his head, a grim understanding in his eyes. Names are like coins, my boy. They get reused. This is not the fool from the banquet. This is another man with the same unlucky name. Or perhaps he pauses, stroking his beard thoughtfully. Perhaps it is the only name they want us to hear. This is a brilliant and subtle piece of imperial information control. In the chaotic swirl of rumors about the new conspiracy, a plot involving powerful, well-known figures, the authorities release a single, convenient name, Mithridates. It's a common enough Persian name, but it's also now a name freighted with meaning. It's the name of a traitor. It's the name associated with the empire's most dreaded punishment. By pinning the conspiracy on a Mithridates, the court achieves several things at once. They give the faceless plot a simple identity. They subtly link this new, dangerous conspiracy to the previous, more pathetic case of treason, lumping all dissenters into the same category of foolish, doomed men. And most importantly, they avoid naming the truly powerful families who might have been involved, preventing wider panic or calls for vendetta among the nobility. It's a masterful piece of public relations designed to control the narrative. Who was really involved? A satrap, a general, a prince? The public will never know for sure. They will only know that the traitor was a man named Mithridates, and he will get what traitors deserve. This is a tactic that historians of propaganda know well, the creation of a scapegoat, a simplified target for public fear and anger. Whether this second Mithridates was the true ringleader or just a convenient fall guy is a question that will be debated in the tea houses and caravanserais for months, but never answered. The official story is the only one that matters. As you piece this together, the story you first heard in Susa suddenly snaps into a new focus. You had assumed the tale of the first Mithridates, the banquet boaster, was a straightforward account. Now, you're not so sure. Was that story even true? Or was it a pilot program for the name? A way of establishing Mithridates as a synonym for traitor in the public consciousness. The level of manipulation is dizzying. You are witnessing, in real time, the construction of a state-sanctioned narrative. The raw, messy facts of the conspiracy, a genuine threat to the throne, are being processed and refined into a simple, digestible, and terrifying morality tale. The main character's name is Mithridates, and his fate is already sealed, because his name is already synonymous with the punishment. This brings up a quirky, and for you, deeply unsettling, aspect of ancient Persian culture: the significance of names. Names weren't just labels, they were believed to define a person's essence and destiny. Many Persian names were the OPH or containing the name of a god, like Mithridates, which means given by Mithra, or reflected a desired quality like Darius, which means he who holds fast the good. The idea that a name itself could become cursed or associated with treason would have been a powerful concept. To have the name Mithridates at this moment in time would be like living with a target on your back. Over the next few days, the official story solidifies. It is said that this new Mithridates, a military officer, was caught attempting to bribe the palace guards. That he had been in correspondence with Greek spies. The details are specific, plausible, and almost certainly a mix of fact and fiction, designed to be as damning as possible. The court doesn't need to announce the sentence. Everyone already knows what it will be. The precedent has been set. The story has been written. The barge captains will be told to prepare to small boats. The keepers of the royal pantry will be ordered to bring out the milk and the honey. The name Mithridates is, for the second time in your journey, being publicly dragged towards a slow and sticky end. Arish decides it's time to act. I have sold my wool, he tells you, his voice firm. My business here is done. The air is poison. We leave on the morning tide of camels. You feel a profound sense of relief. You have seen the beautiful mask of the empire at Persepolis, and now you have seen the ugly gears of its propaganda machine grind away. You have seen how a man can be condemned not just by his actions, but by his name. The desire to simply be a nameless, faceless traveler on a long road, far from the centers of power, has never been stronger. You pack your meager belongings, ready to leave the city of the Persians and its terrifying manufactured truths behind. The morning of your departure is grey and overcast, the sky mirroring the mood of the city. Arish has arranged for you to join a small, fast-moving caravan heading north towards the old Median heartlands. The pace is brisk, urgent. Everyone wants to put distance between themselves and the paranoia of Persepolis. As your small train of mules and men skirts the edge of the sprawling settlements, you have to detour around a section of the plain near the river. The main track is blocked by a line of the king's guards, the spearmen known as the Immortals, standing shoulder to shoulder. They are not stopping people for questioning, they are simply forming a silent, impassable wall. Behind them, further down towards a marshy inlet of the Pul River, you can see a flicker of official activity, but it's too far to make out any details. The caravan leader, a grim-faced man from Bactria, grumbles and pulls his mule's head, leading the group on a wide, looping path around the cordoned-off area. Nobody complains. Nobody asks the gods what is happening. Everyone knows. You don't need to see it to know what it is. This is the chosen place. The riverbank here is marshy and secluded, away from the main settlements and the grandeur of the palace. It's a place of reeds and mud and buzzing insects. A place of no significance. It's the perfect stage for an act of deliberate, symbolic degradation. To execute a traitor, you don't give him a grand stage like the Achaemenid. You give him a muddy, forgotten ditch. The location itself is part of the punishment. You steal a glance over your shoulder as you walk away. You see a few figures moving near the water's edge. You think you can make out the shape of two small, shallow boats, looking like a discarded clamshell on the muddy bank. The sight sends a cold spike of dread through you, even though you were expecting it. It's one thing to hear the story, to discuss it in abstract terms. It's another thing entirely to be in the vicinity of the act itself, to know that just a few hundred meters away, a human being is being prepared for that. This is the moment the abstract horror becomes a geographical location. It's no longer just a story, it's a place on the map, a coordinate of dread. You look at the other people in your caravan. They are all looking forward, their faces set, their pace quickening. They are practicing a form of collective denial or willed ignorance. They know what is happening, but they are choosing not to know, not to see. It is the only sane response. To look too closely would be to invite trouble or madness, or both. This brings to mind the Zoroastrian concept of ritual purity. Certain places could become ritually unclean through contact with death or corruption. The process of cleansing such a place was complex, involving prayers and washings. By performing this execution in a remote, marshy area, the authorities were also containing the spiritual contamination. They were not just hiding a gruesome act from public view, they were quarantining the source of profound ritual impurity. The line of guards isn't just for security, it's a sanitary cordon. A strange, small detail from a text you once read floats into your memory. The Greek physician Ctesias, who claimed to have been a doctor at the Persian court, was the one who provided some of the most graphic, if sensationalized, accounts of Persian punishments. He wrote that the victims of the boat punishment could linger for days, sometimes over 2 weeks, before succumbing. Historians have long debated the reliability of Ctesias. He was a notorious teller of tall tales, and much of his writing reads like pulp fiction. But could a person survive that long? The Dr. Apollonides' clinical description of a cascade of system failures suggests it would be a slow process. The honey and milk would provide a form of sustenance, prolonging the agony far beyond what simple starvation or dehydration would allow. The thought is unbearable. How could a state be so patient in its cruelty? You force yourself to look ahead, to focus on the plodding rhythm of the mule in front of you. You try to think of the road, of the mountains you will cross, or the cities you will see, but the image of the cordoned-off riverbank is burned into your mind. You are leaving Persepolis, but you are taking a piece of its darkness with you. The silent, complicit detour your caravan takes around the forbidden zone is a perfect metaphor for life in the empire. You see the power, you know about the cruelty, but you learn to walk around it, to look the other way, to get on with your business. It's a survival mechanism. To stare too long at the abyss is to risk falling in. Later that day, miles away from the capital, your caravan stops for water at a small village. The locals are quiet, subdued. They know that the king's justice is being done just down the river. The news has traveled, a ripple of fear spreading out from the capital. The story of Mithridates is no longer a whisper. It's a palpable presence, a shadow that has fallen over the entire region. And you were there. You didn't see it, but you were there, on the edge of the shadow. Weeks turn into a month. Your new caravan has traveled far to the north, into the rugged, windswept plains of Media. The grandeur of Persepolis feels like a distant dream or perhaps a nightmare. You have fallen back into the simple, monotonous rhythm of the road: wake, walk, eat, sleep. It's a healing rhythm, and the sharp edges of your memories have begun to soften. One evening, in a bustling trading town famous for its horses, you and Iranica sharing a meal with a group of Ionian merchants. They are Greeks from the coast of Anatolia, subjects of the Persian Empire but culturally distinct. They are voluble, argumentative, and endlessly curious. They are traders in goods, but also in information and stories. One of the Ionians, a sharp-eyed man named Damon, hears that you have come from Persepolis. His interest is immediately piqued. He and his friends have heard the rumors of a new conspiracy and a traitor's strange fate. They pepper you with questions. You are reluctant to speak, but Arish, ever the diplomat, answers for you in vague, careful terms. Yes, there was tension at the court. Yes, a man was accused. Yes, his punishment was said to be severe. Daimon listens, then leans back, a cynical smile on his face. It will make a fine story for Plutarch to tell one day, he says almost to himself. The name hangs in the air. Plutarch, you ask, who is that? Oh, a writer. Not born yet, Damon says with a wave of his hand. But there will be men like him. There are always men like him. Greeks who love to write about the Persians. They will collect these stories, our Ctesias and Herodotus, and the ones who come after. They will write of the king's decadence, his harem, his eunuchs, and his wonderfully barbaric punishments. And their audiences in Athens and Sparta will eat it up. This is a startlingly modern and cynical take. Damon, the Ionian merchant, understands the concept of a Median narrative. He knows that the stories being forged in the crucible of Persepolis are not just for internal consumption. They will be exported. They will become part of the great cultural war between Greece and Persia. They will write about this bespoke business, Damon continues, gesturing with a piece of flatbread. And they will present it as proof of Persian depravity. They will conveniently forget to mention that we Athenians once executed a man by forcing him to drink hemlock, a slow, paralyzing poison, or that the Spartans leave their unwanted infants on a mountainside to die. Every culture has its own peculiar cruelties, but the winners are at least. The ones who write the most books get to frame the narrative. His words put everything into a new perspective. You have been struggling with the moral and philosophical implications of the bold punishment from within the Persian worldview. You've seen it as a two-role, as religious theater, as propaganda. But you haven't seen it from the outside as a piece of foreign propaganda. The historical figure Damon mentions, Plutarch of CA, Cheronea, will indeed be born centuries later in a world dominated by Rome. He will write a biography of the Persian king Artaxerxes II, and it is in this biography that the most famous and detailed account of the Scaphism of Mithridates is preserved. Plutarch's telling is lurid, dramatic, and filled with specific, almost novelistic details. It is, for many, the definitive account. But, as Damon so astutely points out, Plutarch was a Greek writing for a Greco-Roman audience. His goal was not objective history in the modern sense, it was to teach moral lessons, often by using historical figures as examples of virtue or vice. The Persians, the long-time rivals of the Greeks, were often cast in the role of the other wealthy, powerful, but ultimately soft, decadent, and morally compromised. A story like Scaphism was the perfect anecdote to illustrate this stereotype. This is a central problem for modern historians trying to understand this period. The vast majority of our narrative sources about the Achaemenid Empire were written by their enemies. We have the Persians' buildings, their art, their accounting records. We can read the king's own proclamations carved in stone. But we don't have their stories, their histories, their private letters, their histories. Their private letters a distorted one. Is Plutarch's account of Scaphism a reasonably accurate retelling of a real event, passed down through oral tradition? Or is it a piece of exaggerated, third-hand horror fiction, a tall tale that he included because it made for a good story and reinforced his cultural biases? We are, in a way, in the same position as you. We hear the story, but we have to question the storyteller. Damon drains his wine cup. So when you hear these tales, he advises you and the table at large, always ask yourself who is telling the story, and who are they telling it to? The truth is a story to control their own people. My countrymen will use it to make the Persians look like monsters. And the man in the boat? He is just a prop in everyone else's theater. The conversation moves on to trade routes and the price of saffron, but Damon's words have opened a new door in your mind. The story of the boats is not a single thing. It's a multifaceted event that is perceived and used in different ways by different people. It's a domestic to love fear, a foreign policy talking point, a moral fable. Its meaning changes depending on who is telling it. This doesn't make it any less horrific for the victim, but it makes the world you are living in infinitely more complex. You are not just navigating a physical landscape, but a landscape of competing narratives, a world of stories at war with each other. Your journey with Iranica, the Ionian merchants, takes you further into the heart of ancient Media, towards the city of Espionage. The landscape is a high, arid plateau, beautiful in its darkness. One afternoon, you see a peculiar sight on a low hill overlooking the road. It's a small, simple stone building, windowless, with a fire burning on its roof. A thin plume of sandalwood rises into the clear blue sky. A fire temple, Arash says, pointing with his chin. N-A-T-H-G-A-H. The Ionian merchants fall silent, looking at the temple with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. This is the heart of the Persian faith, a religion that is as alien to them as their pantheon of flawed, human-like gods is to the Persians. Drawn by a quiet curiosity to understand the spiritual world that produced the men of Persepolis, you decide to walk closer. Arash, a devout man himself, accompanies you. A priest, Omega, emerges from the small building. He is dressed in simple white robes and a cloth veil. The pattern covers the lower part of his face. He nods a greeting, his eyes calm and serene. Arash explains that you are travelers wishing to show respect. The priest does not invite you, and the inner sanctum is for the initiated alone, but he is willing to talk. He explains the meaning of the fire. It is not the fire itself that they worship, he says patiently, but what it represents. Sosha, that word again. Truth, order, purity, and the light of the Creator God are Ahura Mazda. The fire is the physical manifestation of the divine, a symbol of purity that must never be extinguished or defiled. This is the core of Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions. It was founded by the prophet Zoroaster or Zarathustra centuries earlier, and its influence on the Achaemenid kings was profound. It reframed the universe as a grand cosmic struggle between Ahura Mazda, the force of good and light, and Angramenu, the force of evil, darkness, and lies dropped of august evil. The priest explains that the duty of a good person is to side with Ahura Mazda, to live a life of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. This will help to push back the darkness and bring about the eventual triumph of light. You listen fascinated. It's a philosophy of profound moral clarity and optimism. It's about striving for purity, for truth, for order. And then, a jarring thought hits you. How can a culture that so deeply values purity, light, and goodness produce a punishment as impure, as dark, as grotesque as the boats. The contrast is staggering. Here, on this quiet hillside, is a vision of serene, contemplative faith. Down in the world of politics and power, that same faith is used to justify acts of unimaginable cruelty. Apollonides, the Greek doctor, had hinted at it, but seeing this peaceful temple, you feel the contradiction more acutely than ever. You cautiously ask the priest about justice. How does a religion of light deal with the darkness of human crime? The priest's expression becomes sterner. He explains that lying is a particularly heinous sin, as it is a direct act of service to Achaemenid. Treason against the king, who is a Horum as the chosen regent on earth, is the ultimate manifestation of Dr. Auguste. Such an act creates a deep spiritual stain. The punishment, he explains, must not only address the crime but also the pollution it causes. And this is where you encounter a key, and often misunderstood, tenet of their faith. The fundamental elements earth, water, and fire are sacred creations of Ahura Mazda. To pollute them with something dead or unclean like a corpse is a grave sin. This is why traditional burial in the earth or cremation on a pyre were forbidden for believers. A dead body was seen as the ultimate victory of Achaemenid, a vessel of corruption. This religious belief had a direct and very practical impact on their funerary practices, leading to the famous sky burials on what came to be known as Towers of Silence, leaving the dead to be consumed by scavenger birds. It was seen as the cleanest way to dispose of a body without defiling the sacred element. But what about an execution? How do you kill a man without creating pollution? The priest doesn't speak of specific punishments, but you can connect the dots yourself. A punishment like Scaphism, in a twisted way, adheres to this logic. The victim is not buried in the earth. He is not burned in a fire. His body is not cast into a pure river. He is placed in a contained vessel, the boats, and left to be decomposed by what they considered to be the agents of the evil spirit, the FSTRA. The insects and crawling things. It's a form of disposal that, in their view, keeps the sacred elements pure. The execution becomes a form of cosmic garbage disposal. The full, horrifying brilliance of the punishment dawns on you. It's a legal sentence, a tool of political propaganda, a piece of religious theater, and a ritually correct method of execution all rolled into one. It solves a dozen problems at once. The sheer intellectual complexity behind its cruelty is what is most chilling. The role of the Achaemenid kings in relation to Zoroastrianism is, of course, a subject of intense scholarly debate. The kings like Darius and Xerxes invoke Ahura Mazda constantly in their inscriptions. But was this genuine faith, or was it a cynical use of religion to legitimize their rule? Did they truly believe they were agents of a cosmic good, or did they just find the philosophy a useful tool for governance? Like so many things about this empire, the answer is probably a messy combination of both. You thank the priest for his time and walk back down the hill with Arash. The sun is beginning to set, and the fire on the temple roof seems to burn brighter against the encroaching darkness. You have a new appreciation for the spiritual landscape of Persia. It is a world of stark dualities, light and dark, truth and lies, purity and corruption. And you are beginning to understand that in their world, the fight against darkness could justify the most terrible things. The conversation with the Zoroastrian priest unlocks another chamber in the complex of your understanding. His explanation of ritual purity and the horror of defiling the elements makes you see the world through a new filter. It's no longer just about politics or fear, it's about a deep, metaphysical anxiety. As you travel with Arash towards Espionage, he elaborates on this. Seeing your genuine if horrified interest, the old merchant shares a piece of folklore, a concept that the priest had only hinted at. It's a word that makes even the worldly Arash lower his voice, as if saying it too loudly might summon it. Nasu is not a demon you fight with a sword, he explains, his eyes scanning the barren landscape as if for spies. She is a spirit, the spirit of the corpse. He tells you the belief, passed down in stories from the Avesta, the holy texts of the Zoroastrianism. When a person dies, the moment the soul leaves the body, Nasu rushes to inhabit the corpse. She is a she-demon taking the form of a hideous fly, a creature of decay and contamination. Her touch, her very presence, is corruption itself. She is the agent of Achaemenid, tasked with spreading pollution and disease from the dead to the living. This is why a corpse is so terrifying to a true believer, Arish says. It is not the memory of the person. It is the vessel of Nasu. Anyone who touches the dead body becomes unclean. The ground it lies on becomes unclean. Everything it touches is tainted. He describes the intricate purification rituals required for someone who has come into contact with a corpse. A complex series of washings, not with wool's urine, the gomis, which was believed to have special cleansing properties, followed by water, and then drying in the sun. It's a multi-day process to drive the influence of Nasu away. This folklore, this personification of decay as a demonic fly, is a shockingly powerful piece of imagery. And it clicks perfectly, and horribly, into place with everything else you've learned. The boat punishment is not just leaving a man to be eaten by insects. It is, in a symbolic sense, delivering him directly to Nasu. It is feeding the corpse demon while the victim is still alive. The choice of a fly as the demon's form is no coincidence. In the dry, hot climate of the Middle East, flies are the constant companions of death and decay. They are the first to arrive at a carcass. The ancient Persians, with their keen observational skills, mythologized this natural process. They turned a biological reality into a theological horror story. This deep-seated fear of the corpse fiend helps to explain things that would otherwise seem baffling. Why the elaborate, and to an outsider, bizarre, sky burials? To keep Nasu and her pollution contained and away from the sacred elements on the community. Why the intense rules about not carrying a corpse alone? Because the demon's power was thought to be so great, it required multiple people to resist her influence. Some scholars have argued that these beliefs, while framed in religious terms, were also a form of protest-annotation. They were ancient public health directives dressed up as divine law. The fear of Nasu encouraged the swift and careful disposal of the dead, preventing the spread of disease in a world without germ theory. The uncleanness was both spiritual and literal. Whether it was a spiritual doctrine that led to sanitary practices or observations about sanitation that led to the spiritual doctrine is a chicken and egg problem that historians love to debate. You try to imagine the mindset of the officials carrying out the sentence of the boats. In their minds, the traitor Mithridates, by embracing the light to Auguste, has already aligned himself with the forces of darkness. He is already spiritually corrupt. The sentence is merely making his inner state manifest in the physical world. They are not just killing a man, they are handing him over to the demonic forces he chose to serve. They are letting the agents of Achaemenid, the flies, the crawling things, the embodiment of Nasu, claim him. The cruelty is therefore laundered to religious justification. It's not just an act of state power, it's a righteous act in a cosmic war. It purifies the community by expelling the source of corruption in the most symbolically appropriate way possible. You shudder. The pieces all fit together now, forming a picture of terrifying coherence. The legalism of the court, the propaganda of the state, the dualism of the religion, and the folklore of the common people all converge on this single, grotesque act. Each system reinforces the others, creating a seamless logic that can produce an outcome of profound inhumanity. Arish finishes his story as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows that look like grasping fingers. So you see, he says quietly, it is not just about causing pain. It is about destroying the soul. It is to make a man so unclean that perhaps, even in the next world, Ahura Mazda will not recognize him. That final thought is the most chilling of all. The punishment wasn't designed to end at death. It was designed to echo into eternity. You look around at the vast, empty landscape of the Persian plateau. It feels ancient, haunted by ideas and beliefs that are far more powerful and far more terrifying than any simple ghost. Finally, you arrive in Espionage. It is an ancient city, much older than Persepolis, nestled in the foothills of a mountain. In the summer, the king and his court would often relocate here from the searing heat of Susa, making it another one of the empire's rotating capitals. It's a city of power and old money, with a different feel from the raw, new world energy of Persepolis. Arish has many connections here, and as a favor for your companionship on the road, he secures you an invitation to a banquet. It's not at the royal palace, but at the home of a wealthy Median nobleman, a man who holds a high rank in the provincial administration. Arish assures you that if you are quiet, observant, and stick to the watered-down wine, you will be fine. You enter the main hall of the nobleman's villa, and the sheer opulence is stunning. The air is thick with incense and the aroma of roasted lamb, saffron rice, and sweet pastries. Guests, both men and women, are reclining on lavishly decorated couches, propped up on one elbow in the Persian style. They are draped in brightly colored robes of fine linen and silk, adorned with gold and silver jewelry. Musicians play softly on harps and flutes in a corner. This is the decadent, luxurious side of the Persian elite that the Greek writers loved to criticize. It's a world of sensory pleasure, of immense wealth displayed without reservation. You feel deeply out of place in your simple traveler's clothes, a drab moth that has fluttered into a garden of peacocks. You find a seat on a couch in a far corner, hoping to remain invisible. Arash is in his element, greeting people, laughing, and exchanging pleasantries. You watch the scene, fascinated. This is the world of the people who make the decisions, the ones who benefit from the empire's vast wealth. These are the people the king needs to keep happy, and also the people he needs to keep in line. As the evening wears on and the wine flows freely, the conversation around you becomes louder and less guarded. You listen, catching snippets. They talk of horse races, of the price of Babylonian textiles, of a new garden the nobleman is planning. It's all very civilized, very pleasant. But then a man on a nearby couch, a military officer with a scarred face, brings up the recent events in Persepolis. A hush falls over the immediate vicinity. He doesn't mention the conspiracy directly, but he talks about the importance of loyalty. The king's justice is a harsh but necessary medicine, he says, his voice slurring slightly from the wine. It purges the sickness from the body of the empire. An older man, a bureaucrat with soft, manicured hands, nods slowly. Indeed, I heard the whole affair was concluded. By the river. He says the words by the river with a meaningful glance, and everyone understands the euphemism. A sad business, a third man says, though he doesn't look particularly sad. I knew his family. A good name now ruined forever. They say he is still on the water. The phrase hangs in the air, heavy and dark. Still on the water. It implies the punishment is ongoing, that the man Mithridates is, at this very moment, alive and trapped in his horrifying prison. The casual way they discuss it is what's most unsettling. It's like they are talking about a drawn-out siege or a slow-moving storm. It is a topic of conversation, a piece of political gossip, savored between sips of wine. This is the true audience for the punishment, not the common people who are kept away by guards. It is these men, the powerful, the wealthy, the ambitious. The punishment of Mithridates is a message sent directly to them, a conversation the king is having with his elite. And here, in the perfumed air of this banquet, you are hearing their reply. They are showing their loyalty by discussing the traitor's fate with grim approval. They are reinforcing the social order by collectively condemning the one who broke it. A lesser-known detail of Persian court life was the incredible importance of the royal banquet. To be invited to dine with the king, or even in his presence, was the highest honor. The seating arrangement was a rigid hierarchy, your proximity to the king a direct measure of your status. It was a place of great opportunity, but also great danger. A misspoken word, a breach of etiquette, as the first Mithridates supposedly learned, could lead to ruin. These private banquets, like the one you're at, were microcosms of that royal court, spaces where reputations were made and lost. The conversation shifts, but the shadow remains. You realize that even here in this room of immense privilege and comfort, fear is a permanent guest at the feast. It's the ghost that haunts the empire, the fear of a rival's accusation, the fear of the king's displeasure. The story of the boats is the ultimate bedtime story for the Persian nobility, a tale to remind them to always watch what they say, even when drunk on the finest wine. You look around the room at the opulent decorations, the rich food, the beautiful music. It is the Persian paradise, the walled garden of luxury and pleasure. But you now know that just outside the walls of this garden, there is always a muddy river bank and 2 small boats waiting. The beauty and the horror are inextricably linked. One cannot exist without the other. This banquet isn't an escape from the empire's cruelty, it's a celebration made possible by it. The banquet continues, a masterpiece of sensory overload. Servants bring platter after platter of food. You see roasted duck, glistening with fat bowls of stewed lentils and chickpeas and piles of fresh fruit, figs, grapes, and deep red pomegranates. And on a central table, given a place of honor, is a large ornate ceramic bowl filled with golden honey, thick and viscous, with a silver ladle resting in it. Guests spoon the honey over their cheese, drizzle it onto their bread, or mix it into their wine. It is the taste of luxury, a symbol of the sweetness of life that their wealth affords them. But for you, the sight of that bowl is like a physical blow. Your stomach clenches. You watch as the nobleman host takes a flatbread, dips it generously into the honey, and eats it with a smile. The same substance that is a delicacy here, a mark of hospitality and pleasure, is at this very moment being used as a lure for insects on a riverbank outside Persepolis. This is the ultimate duality. Honey the preserver and the destroyer, the giver of life and the instrument of a slow, agonizing death. You find yourself lost in thought, tracing the journey of this simple, natural product. You think of the beekeeper you saw weeks ago, so peaceful and methodical, combing his bees with smoke. You think of the bees themselves, flitting from flower to flower, creatures of sunlight and air, performing their ancient, industrious dance. They create this perfect, golden food, a miracle of nature. And then you think of how humanity, in its infinite and terrifying ingenuity, can take that miracle and twist it into something monstrous. The same substance can be a medicine or a poison, a sacrament or a curse, all depending on the intention of the hand that wields it. This journey has taught you that nothing in this empire is simple. Every symbol has a shadow. The royal road connects, but it also controls. Persepolis inspires awe, but it's built on a foundation of fear. Zoroastrianism preaches light, but its doctrines can be used to justify the deepest darkness. And now honey, the most innocent of pleasures, has been revealed as the most versatile to love all. This leads you to consider a strange, niche aspect of ancient economies, the honey trade. Honey was, for much of the ancient world, the primary sweetener. Sugar cane was known but was an obscure luxury from the Far East. Honey was a vital commodity, for food, for medicine it's a natural antiseptic, and for making alcoholic drinks like mead. The control of honey-producing lands was a serious economic prize. The Persian Empire, with its vast and varied territories, would have controlled a significant portion of the world's honey supply. It was a form of liquid gold. To use such a valuable, life-sustaining commodity as an instrument of torture is a profound statement. It's a demonstration of ultimate power. The king has so much wealth, so much slave force at his command, that he can afford to waste it. He can literally pour it onto a traitor and let it rot. It's the most decadent, contemptuous display of power imaginable. It's not just killing a man, it's mocking him with the very symbol of life's sweetness. A servant approaches you, offering a small honey-drenched pastry from a silver tray. You politely shake your head, mumbling that you are full. The servant moves on unfazed. But you feel the eyes of Arish on you from across the room. He gives you a small, almost imperceptible nod. He understands. You think about the man in the boat. Does he smell the cloying sweetness of the honey that covers him? In the first stages, before the pain and the delirium take over, is he aware of the profound, cruel irony of his situation? To be dying of thirst, surrounded by a substance that is essentially pure energy. To be entombed in sweetness. Historians and archaeologists often face this challenge. An object in a museum has a single, sterile meaning, but in its original context, it could have held a dozen different, often contradictory, meanings. A pot of honey found in a Persian ruin could be the remnant of a delicious meal, a medical balm, an offering to a god, or a stored component for a state execution. The object is the same, the story changes entirely based on context. And you, the traveler, are one of the few people who can see all these contexts at once. It's a lonely and unsettling form of enlightenment. The banquet is winding down. The music is softer, the conversation's more muted. Guests are beginning to take their leave. You feel an urgent need to get out, to breathe the clean night air, free from the scent of incense and honey. You have seen the heights of Persian civilization tonight, its art, its cuisine, its hospitality, and you have never been more aware of the abyss, but never been more aware of the abyss that lies just beneath the glittering surface. You leave the nobleman's villa with Irish the cool night air a welcome relief. The sounds of the banquet fade behind you, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the distant barking of a dog. Your mind, however, refuses to leave the banquet hall and the conversations within. It keeps circling back to the riverbank, to the two boats, to the man inside. In an attempt to distance yourself from the horror, to process it from a place of safety, you find yourself doing something strange. You try to imagine the scene not from a human perspective, but from the perspective of the smallest, most insignificant actor in the drama. You try to imagine the world through the multifaceted eyes of a single fly. Let's try it. Let's shrink down. The world loses its coherence, its human meaning. It becomes a kaleidoscope of sensory inputs, light, dark, wind currents, and above all scent. You are a common filth fly, a creature of instinct. Your existence is a simple equation: find food, lay eggs, repeat. For days, a new and intoxicating scent has permeated the air near the marsh. It's not the usual smell of stagnant water or decaying reeds. It's a powerful, irresistible sweetness, a beacon. You follow the scent, your wings a low, persistent buzz. You land on a strange curved surface. It's hardened rough, like baked earth clay. But smeared all over it is the source of the divine smell. A golden, sticky substance. Honey. It's an impossible bounty, a feast beyond imagining. You land and begin to feed, your proboscis extending to drink the sweet, energy-rich liquid. Other flies are here, hundreds of them. A whole community drawn to this miraculous offering. The surface is a writhing, buzzing carpet of your kind, but there are strange interruptions in this landscape of clay and honey. There are openings. From these openings comes a different set of smells. The familiar, attractive scent of warm-blooded life, sweat, the faint, coppery tang of blood from a small scratch, and another richer, more complex smell, milk, also sweet, also irresistible. You crawl towards one of the openings, the one where the smell of life is strongest. A landscape of skin, hair, and eyes. The surface is warm. It moves, but only slightly. You land near an eye. It's a wet, glistening orb, but it doesn't blink away as you approach. It seems to be looking at something far away, or perhaps nothing at all. A tear, thick with salt and desperation, oozes from its corner and traces a path through the sticky honey. This detached, non-human perspective is a strange narrative tool, one that some modern writers have used to describe horrific events without sensationalizing the human suffering. By focusing on the purely biological or physical aspects of a scene, the emotional weight is conveyed through its very absence. It forces the reader to fill in the missing horror themselves. It's a technique of alienation. Days pass. The world of the fly remains simple, but the landscape changes. The sweet smells are now mixed with others. The acrid scent of ammonia. The foul odor of dysentery. The sickly sweet smell of infection. New wounds appear on the warm surface, weeping pus. These are also sources of food. For you and your kin, this place is a paradise, a nursery. You lay your eggs in the warm, moist crevices of the wounds, in the folds of the unblinking eyes. You are fulfilling your biological imperative. You have no concept of cruelty, of justice, of treason. You have no understanding of the man whose name is Mithridates. He is a resource, a host, a living, breathing, slowly decaying ecosystem. You are not an executioner, you are an opportunist. You are not an agent of a god, you are a creature of nature, playing your part in the great, unsentimental cycle of life and death. This imaginative exercise, as grim as it is, provides a strange kind of clarity. It strips the event of all its man-made meaning, the politics, the religion, the propaganda. It reduces it to a purely biological process. A large mammal is being consumed by insects. That's all. And in a way, this is the most terrifying perspective of all, because it implies that the universe is indifferent. The horror must and anger remain. You may not be real. There may be no cosmic struggle between good and evil. There may be only the buzzing of a fly, the slow decay of flesh, and the relentless, meaningless cycle of nature. The horror of the boats is not that it's a victory for the forces of darkness, but that it might be a testament to the utter absence of any cosmic justice at all. This is a philosophical position that some of the Ionian Greek thinkers, the precursors to the great philosophers of Athens, were just beginning to explore a materialist universe, governed by natural laws, not by the whims of gods. The idea that all the grand dramas of humanity are wars, our laws were ultimately insignificant in the face of an uncaring cosmos. It's a lonely and frightening thought, and perhaps it is the final, deepest horror contained within the story of the boat. You shake your head, trying to clear the image of the fly's world from your mind. You are human. You cannot, and should not, see the world that way. To do so is to lose your own humanity. You look over at Arish, his face calm and wise in the moonlight. You are grateful for his presence, a reminder of the human world of kindness, loyalty, and companionship. It is the only real defense against the buzzing chaos. Your time in Espionage comes to an end. Arish, his business concluded, is heading east again, back towards his home. But your path lies west. You have a desire to see the ocean, the great Aegean Sea that the Ionian merchants spoke of, to feel a different kind of air. You thank the old merchant for his kindness and his wisdom. He has been your guide through the labyrinth of the Persian mind. Be well, young traveler, Arish says, placing a hand on your shoulder. Remember what you have seen, but do not let it poison your heart. The world is large, and there is more to it than the king and his fears. You take his words to heart and join a caravan heading towards the setting sun, back onto the Great Royal Road. The journey is long, and you have much time to think. You've seen the empire at its most monstrous. You've seen its power, its faith, its paranoia, and its art. And you can't help but wonder, can something so vast, so complex, so full of contradictions, last forever? One evening, camping under a sky full of brilliant, cold stars, you fall into conversation with a fellow traveler. He is a Babylonian, a scholar of the old ways, a man who studies the movements of the heavens. He is an astrologer, a practitioner of a science that the Babylonians had perfected over centuries and which the Persians greatly respected. He has been to Persepolis, to Susa, to Babylon. He has cast horoscopes for nobles and merchants. He tells you that he has seen things in the stars, omens in the patterns of the planets, that trouble him. An empire is like a man, he says in a soft, raspy voice, tracing the constellations with a thin finger. It is born, it grows strong, it reaches its peak, and then it begins to decay. It is the way of things. No dynasty rules forever. He points to a reddish star low on the horizon. That is the star of war. It glows with unusual brightness these nights. And over in the west, he gestures towards the direction you are heading. A new constellation is rising. A ram, a young, aggressive ram, full of fire. He is speaking in the metaphorical language of his trade, but the meaning is clear. He is predicting a future conflict, a new power rising in the west that will challenge the might of Persia. He is, in his own way, predicting the coming of Alexander the Great. Of course, he doesn't know the name. He just sees the patterns. He speaks of a weakness he has observed in the empire's heart. It has become too pleased with itself, he says. The king is surrounded by luxury. His satraps think only of their own wealth. The army is large, but its heart is soft. They rely on fear to keep order, but fear can curdle into hate. An empire ruled by fear is a brittle empire. It looks strong, but it will shatter under a hard blow. His words resonate with everything you've seen. The magnificent display at Persepolis, the paranoid reaction to a minor court intrigue, the reliance on grotesque punishments to maintain control, they are not signs of a confident, stable power. They are the actions of an aging giant, terrified of its own shadow, haunted by the memory of its own vigorous youth. This is a perspective that many modern historians share. The Achaemenid Empire in its later years, under the successors of Darius and Xerxes, is often described as entering a period of stagnation. The very systems that made it strong, the satrap-wise system, the royal road, the vast army, also created vulnerabilities. Satraps became corrupt and rebellious. The road that carried messages of control could also carry news of dissent. And the massive, multi-ethnic army, full of mercenaries, often had questionable loyalty. A fascinating, and perhaps apocryphal story illustrates this growing weakness. It's said that a later Persian king, when shown a new, more efficient type of Greek catapult, was unimpressed. He was content with the old ways, the methods that had worked for his ancestors. The story is probably invented, but it captures a kernel of truth. The empire was becoming conservative, resistant to innovation, while its enemies on the periphery were becoming more dynamic, more adaptable. The academic debate over the reasons for the empire's fall is, of course, complex. Economic strain, political instability, military failures all played a part. But the idea of a great power becoming a victim of its own success is a compelling one. The Babylonian astrologer falls silent, content to watch the slow dance of the stars. His prediction hangs in the cool night air. An empire in its twilight. A young, aggressive ram rising in the west. You think of Persepolis, the city of stone built to last for eternity. You now see it differently. It is not a symbol of eternal power, but a monument to a fleeting moment of glory. A magnificent tombstone for a dynasty that already, unknowingly, has the seeds of its own destruction growing within it. And what will happen to all of it? To the palaces, the laws, the stories, the fears? What will happen to the story of the boats when the empire that created it is gone? Will it be remembered? Will it be believed? The astrologer's prophecy fills you not with fear, but with a strange sense of melancholy. You are walking through a world that feels permanent and all-powerful, but you have just been told that it is all ephemeral. You are a witness to the final, golden hours of the Persian twilight. And soon, a new, and perhaps more brutal, dawn will come. The astrologer's words become the new lens through which you see the world. As your caravan plods ever westward, every sign of imperial power now seems tinged with a faint air of decay. You see a grand bridge over a river, but you also notice the cracked stones and crumbling mortar. You see a detachment of the king's soldiers, but you notice their worn-out sandals and the bored, listless expressions on their faces. The empire is still immense, still powerful, but you can now see the hairline fractures in its magnificent facade. And with this new perspective, a new feeling begins to grow in your heart, quietly at first, then with more insistence. It is the desire to escape, not just from a specific city or a bad situation, but from the entire system. Your journey began as a simple task, a delivery to Susa. It turned into a flight from a terrifying story. That flight took you to the heart of the empire, to Persepolis, where you sought to understand the nature of the power that so frightened you. You have seen it, you have studied it, you have even, in a way, come to comprehend its bizarre logic. But understanding is not the same as acceptance. You realize you don't want to live in a world where justice is a form of psychological terror, where faith is a justification for cruelty, and where the sweetest things in life can be turned into instruments of death. You don't want to be a subject of a king whose power is maintained by such means. You are an outsider, a traveler, and you wish to remain one. The thought of leaving becomes a quiet obsession. You start listening more intently to the Ionian merchants in your group. They speak of their own cities on the coast of the Aegean Sea: Miletus, Ephesus, Halicarnassus. They are Greek cities, but they are under Persian rule, paying tribute to a Persian satrap. Yet, their way of life, their language, their gods, their language, their gods, their way of thinking, sounds so different. They speak of bustling seaports, of ships sailing to Egypt and the Black Sea, of noisy, democratic assemblies where citizens argue about politics. It sounds chaotic, messy, and alive. It's not a perfect world. The merchants complain endlessly about the taxes they pay to the satrap, about the arrogance of Persian officials. But it is a world with an escape route. The sea offers a freedom that the vast, landlocked Persian plateau cannot. The royal road is a leash, always leading back to the center. The sea is a path to 1,000 different shores. This desire for escape, for an abyss as a journey up and out, was a powerful theme for the Greeks living under or adjacent to Persian rule. The most famous example is the story told by Xenophon, one of the very writers who chronicled the boat punishment. He wrote the Anabos as the story of 10,000 Greek mercenaries who found themselves stranded deep in the heart of the Persian Empire after their employer, Cyrus the Younger, was killed in his rebellion. The story is a thrilling account of their epic march home, fighting their way across mountains and deserts pursued by Persian forces, when they finally reach the Black Sea and cry out T'Chelata, the sea. It's one of the most powerful and moving moments in all of ancient literature. It's a cry of homecoming, of survival, of escape from the clutches of the great land empire. You feel a pale echo of that cry in your own heart. You need to see the sea. You begin to make quiet inquiries. How does one book passage on a ship? How much does it cost? Where do they go? The practicalities of escape start to take shape in your mind. The idea is no longer a vague yearning, it's becoming a plan. This is a turning point in your journey. You are no longer just a passive observer, being pulled along by the currents of the empire. You are about to make a choice, to seize your own destiny. You are choosing to reject the world of Persepolis and all it represents. This leads to a subtle internal conflict that many people living in complex societies face. Do you stay and try to navigate the system for all its flaws? Do you accommodate its power, finding your small place within it like Arish? Or do you leave, seeking a different world, a different set of rules? There's no easy or right answer. Arish, for all his criticism of the empire, is also a proud product of it. He is a Persian, and this is his home. Your conversations with your fellow travelers change. You are less interested in the politics of the court and more interested in the price of olive oil in Athens, or the best way to get from Sardis to the coast. You are gathering intelligence, not for a king or a satrap, but for yourself. The feeling is exhilarating, but also tinged with fear. To leave the empire is to leave the familiar, the known. The royal road, for all its symbolic weight, is safe. It is guarded. For all its cruelty, provides a kind of order. To step off that road, to board a ship, is to step into the unknown, but it is a choice you feel you must make. Your journey to the heart of the empire has shown you that it is not a place where your own heart can rest. You must continue moving until you reach its edge. And then, you must take one more step. The final leg of your overland journey is a descent. After months on the high, arid plateau of the Persian heartland, the royal road begins to slope gently downwards, leading you into the warmer, more humid coastal region of Lydia. The air changes. It becomes softer, carrying a faint, salty tang you haven't smelled before. The flora changes too. You see olive groves, their silver-green leaves shimmering in the sun, and vineyards clinging to the hillsides. You are entering the Greek sphere of influence, the westernmost edge of the great king's domain. Your destination is the city of Sardis, the western terminus of the royal road and the capital of the Lydian satrapy. It's here that your caravan finally disbands, the merchants scattering to the city's famous markets to sell their wares. You stand in the middle of a bustling square, a solitary traveler once more. The long road from Susa finally behind you. Sardis is a city of layers. You can see the old Lydian fortress on its Acropolis, a reminder of the wealthy kingdom that ruled here before Cyrus the Great conquered it. You see the strong presence of Persian administration, a governor's palace, a garrison of soldiers. But the overwhelming feel of the place, the language you hear on the streets, the architecture of the temples is Greek. It's a hybrid city, a place of fusion and friction, where East and West meet. You spend a few days in Sardis getting your bearings and gathering the last of the information you need. You exchange your remaining Persian Ares for the local currency, heavy silver coins stamped with the symbols of the coastal cities. You find a room in an inn frequented by sailors and ship owners, and you listen to their talk of winds, currents, and ports of call. Finally, the day comes. You leave Sardis, not on the King's Road, but on a smaller, dusty track that wends its way towards the coast. You travel with a small group of pilgrims heading to the great temple of Artemis at Ephesus, one of the wonders of the ancient world. The walk takes a few days, and then one afternoon you crest a hill, and you see it. The CAIS. It's a sight that stops you in your tracks. A vast, glittering expanse of the deepest blue stretching to a horizon so sharp it looks like a cut in the fabric of the world. It's immense, but its immensity feels different from that of the Persian plains. The plains felt like a prison, a vast, flat floor under a dome of sky. The sea feels like a promise, a gateway to every land, carrying the smell of salt and seaweed and freedom. You have reached the edge. You think back on the road that brought you here. Over 2,500 kilometers of dust and stone, of mountains and plains. A road that is a monument to a single unifying, controlling idea. You walked that road, from the heart of the empire to its very fringe. You followed the whispers of a terrifying punishment, a journey that led you through the intricacies of imperial power, propaganda, and faith. You went looking for the source of a story, and you found the soul of an empire. The road was a line. It was a chain of command, a conduit of fear, a leash. It was designed to keep the empire tethered to its center, but you have walked it to its end. And now, you are stepping off it. This journey back onto the royal road, but in the opposite direction, represents a reversal of your initiation. Your first trip was an unwilling descent into the empire's dark heart. This final trip is a conscious, deliberate journey towards its periphery and beyond. You are retracing your steps, but with new eyes and a new purpose. A strange, almost forgotten detail of the royal road system comes back to you. The road wasn't just for official travel. The Persians, in their administrative brilliance, actually issued passports. Archaeologists have found Aramaic texts from Egypt, then a Persian satrapy, that are essentially travel permits. They name the traveler his destination and the authorized rations he is to receive at the way stations. It was a system of authorized movement. Your journey, by contrast, has become one of unauthorized escape. You are leaving the jurisdiction, slipping out from under the watchful eye of the king. You say your farewells to the pilgrims and walk down the final hill towards the great port city of Ephesus. You can see the forest of masts in its harbor, the sails of ships from a dozen different nations. It's a city that looks outwards, not inward. Its face is turned to the sea, to trade, to the exchange of goods and ideas with other free cities. You walk through the gates of Ephesus, a traveler who has crossed an entire world. You carry no treasure, no secret messages. Your only baggage is the story you have accumulated, the story of an empire encapsulated in the tale of two small boats. It is a heavy story, but you are about to leave it behind on the shore of this great cleansing sea. You look at the ships in the harbor, their sails flapping in the breeze, and you know that your journey is not over. A new chapter, one of sea and salt and sky, is about to begin. The harbor at Ephesus is a cacophony of life. The air is thick with the smells of salt, tar, fish, and damp wood. The sounds are a chaotic symphony of shouting sailors, creaking ropes, the clang of hammers on metal, and the cries of gulls circling overhead. After the stark, dry silence of the Persian plateau, it's an assault on the senses, but a welcome one. It's the sound of movement of commerce. It's the sound of movement of commerce, of a world that is not centrally controlled. You find the captain of a small, sturdy-looking merchant vessel, a man with a weathered face and eyes the color of the sea. HES sailing for the port of Piraeus, the gateway to Athens. The price he quotes for passage is almost all the silver you have left, but you pay it without hesitation. It feels less like a purchase and more like a ransom. You spend your last afternoon on the Asian continent walking down to the water's edge. You look out over the Aegean, its surface a restless pattern of light and shadow. Behind you lies the vast landmass, the domain of the great king. It's a world of straight roads, high walls, and watchful eyes. A world held together by a fragile combination of magnificent beauty and calculated terror. You think of the man named Mithridates, or the men, if there were indeed two of them. You wonder if the story of the boats will survive the fall of the empire that the old astrologer predicted, Will it be remembered as a factual account, a piece of propaganda, or just a bizarre, unbelievable myth? As it turns out, the story will survive, but only just. It will cling on in the writings of a few Greek authors, a curious footnote in the grand history of empires. It will be largely forgotten for over 2,000 years, a piece of historical flotsam. Then, in a much later age, an age of incredible information and connectivity, it will be rediscovered. It will be pulled from the obscure corners of ancient texts and shared in new digital forums. It will become, for a new generation, a symbol of extreme cruelty, a piece of shocking historical trivia. People will read about it, shudder, and move on. The deep, complex context you have spent months learning, the politics, the religion, the propaganda will be stripped away. The story will become flat, a simple tale of horror, its rich, terrifying meaning lost to the currents of time. That is the ultimate fate of most stories. Your journey has been a search for the truth behind a rumor, and what you found is that the truth is not a single, hard object. It's a murky, layered thing. The boats were real, you have come to believe. A man, or men, really did die that way. But the story of the boats was something else, something else. It was a weapon, a political tool, a religious sermon, a cultural artifact. The reality was a gruesome death. The story was a cornerstone of an imperial policy of fear. The sun begins to set, casting a golden path across the water. It's time. You walk to the docks, your sandals slapping against the stone pier. You board the small ship, its timbers groaning as it rocks in the gentle swell. The captain gives the order. Sailors untie the thick mooring ropes and haul on the lines to raise the single, square sail. The ship slowly pulls away from the dock. You stand at the stern, watching the shore of Asia Minor recede. The great city of Ephesus, the last outpost of the Persian world you will see, grows smaller and smaller. You are leaving it all behind: the royal road, the palaces of Persepolis, the fire temples, the banquets, the whispers, the fear. Your ship passes the mouth of the harbor and enters the open sea. The water here is a deeper blue, the wind fills the sail, and the vessel picks up speed. You are sailing west, into the sunset. The journey that began with a rumor in a marketplace in Susa is ending here, on the quiet deck of a Greek trading ship. You look down at the river of dark water flowing past the hull. It's a different river now, a river of salt and sea, a river that leads to new lands and new possibilities. It's a river of forgetting. You take a deep breath of the clean, cool sea air, and for the first time in a very long time, you feel a sense of peace. The river of your journey has finally into the vast, welcoming emptiness of the ocean. The story is over. And now the ship rocks gently, a slow, steady rhythm in the deep, quiet night. The slap of water against the hull is a soft, persistent whisper, a lullaby from the sea itself. The wind hums a low, single note in the rigging above, a sound as ancient as travel itself. You are lying on the deck, wrapped in a coarse wool blanket. The hard timbers beneath you are comforting, solid presence. The stars here are different. They are not the hard, brilliant diamonds of the Persian plateau. They are softer, shimmering in the moist sea air, their light seeming to melt into the infinite darkness above and below. You can feel the great, slow turning of the world, the ship a tiny, sleeping cradle rocked in the arms of the ocean. Your mind, so long a turbulent sea of its own, begins to quiet. The vivid images that have haunted your journey, the silent guards of Persepolis, the flickering flame of the fire temple, the golden gleam of honey in a bowl begin to recede. They lose their sharp edges, softening, undissolving like salt in water. They are becoming memories now, no longer immediate threats, but stories you will carry, packed away like souvenirs from a strange and distant land. The weight of the journey lifts from your shoulders, a physical release. Your breath deepens, seasoning with the slow, rhythmic swell of the sea. You are no witness, no longer a fugitive, no longer a fugitive, no longer a seeker of grim truths. You are just a passenger, rocked to sleep under a blanket of stars on a journey to a place you have never been. The future is a blank page. The past is a dream from which you are slowly, peacefully waking. There is only the gentle motion of the ship, the soft whisper of the water, and the vast quiet peace of the night. Sleep now, just sleep. The end of the article. Good night.